Chapter 282. Go to watch net. Dongwu City was not far from Mount Tianlong, but Li Yundong walked all the way with Su Chan on his back. As they walked, they talked about recent things. The two of them were so intimate that they refused to let go of each other for even a second. They walked until it was dark before they reached the foot of the mountain. Watch net. Su Chan listened to Li Yundong talk about how he had reached the Zhuji phase, how he had cultivated his Shentong, and how he had passed the divine tribulation. When she heard the tense parts, Su Chan couldn't help but widen her eyes and hold her breath. Especially when Li Yundong said that as soon as he had reached the Zhuji phase, he had met Wu Hao and LV Fengping of the Yin-Yang sect of Mount Wuhua, who had tried to snatch the Fan of Seven Treasures. Su Chan was so angry that she shouted, "Damn it! They should be killed. How dare they bully the few and rob the Fan of Seven Treasures?" Li Yundong chuckled and continued to talk about how he had passed the heavenly tribulation. Su Chan sighed and said, "Jinren Ziyuan must have put in a lot of effort to help you pass the heavenly tribulation. It's a pity that Master was captured at that time. Otherwise, she would have come to help you cross the heavenly tribulation." Li Yundong also sighed and nodded. "Yes, I owe her too much. I'll find a chance to repay her in the future." Then he talked about how he had defeated the masters of various sects in the Fox Zen school of Mount Tianlong. The thrilling and exciting part of it made the little girl's eyes widen, as if she had been there herself. Su Chan waited for Li Yundong to finish speaking. In the end, he had defeated Ziyuan and all the sects had retreated. She looked at Li Yundong with admiration and sighed, "Yundong, when you hadn't officially cultivated, I thought that you would definitely become a great hero in the future. Now it seems that I was right." Li Yundong turned around with a smile and pinched the little girl's nose. "Yes, it's mainly because my little girl has a good eye for heroes. That's why I, a little boy, can change from a useless otaku to the current leader of the Fox Zen school." Su Chan giggled, her expression full of pride. She suddenly asked, "Yundong, do you think Jinren Ziyuan deliberately let you win in the end?" Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "It's possible. Ziyuan's cultivation is not only profound but also extensive. I was very afraid of her magic cultivation and wanted to decide the outcome of the battle by close combat, but I didn't expect that she was also very good at martial arts. Her 8 trigrams palm was extremely wonderful." Su Chan smiled and said, "Haven't you heard of the 10 Taoist 9 doctors and the 10 Taoist 9 martial arts? Which cultivator did not know how to treat illnesses? Which cultivator did not know martial arts? The only difference was that there was a difference in strength. For an inner disciple like Taoist Ziyuan, she had been nourished by medicinal pills since she was in her mother's womb. When she was born, she was bathed in medicinal water and began to practice martial arts at the age of 5. Watch net. Li Yundong nodded and said, "Now that I think about my duel with Zhang Tianhe, I also feel that there was a lot of luck involved. If I were to fight him again, it's hard to say who would win." Su Chan lay on Li Yundong's shoulder and said shyly, "Yundong, you are now the leader of our Fox Zen school. What will you do in the future? When are you going to look for my master?" Li Yundong pondered for a while and said, "I think your master's matter will probably fall on Ziyuan in the end. After all, she is Yanfang's Shizhi. Let's see if Ziyuan can be a peacemaker." Su Chan was lost in thought when she heard this. She said, "I really didn't expect that Master Wang Yuanshan, the leader of the Linggong sect, and Yanfang Wang Yuanshan's Shimi, would have such a complicated relationship. Yanfang is too tolerant and vicious. She actually sneaked into our Fox Zen school as a spy for nearly 9 years and plotted to destroy our Fox Zen school. Such scheming and means are too terrifying." Li Yundong also sighed and said, "Love, this word can make people obsessed and crazy. Yanfang has already walked the devil's path. I hope she will turn back as soon as possible. Alas, I wonder how Ziyuan is doing now." The two of them talked and walked. They had already walked halfway up the mountain and were about to see the gate of the Fox Zen school. Li Yundong patted Su Chan's buttocks and said, "Come down. You are about to enter the Taoist school. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at?" Su Chan giggled. "I'm not afraid." But she obediently climbed down. She looked around, sniffed and said, "There's a strong smell of blood here." Li Yundong sighed and said, "The major sects fought and killed a lot of people. Many people of the Fox Zen school died, and many people of the major sects also died." At this time, Su Chan suddenly tilted her head and said, "I seem to hear someone singing an opera?" Li Yundong was stunned. "Opera? Don't joke around. It's 1 or 2 o'clock in the middle of the night. Who would be singing in the mountains? Could it be that the ghosts of the dead are still lingering around? You can't scare me." Su Chan smiled and said, "That's right. You are now a famous figure in the cultivation world. Why would you be afraid of these ghosts? But I did hear someone singing an opera. Foxes were born with sharp five senses, far better than humans. Li Yundong listened attentively and heard a faint sound of opera coming from the distance. Go to see the net. 7ko-. Li Yundong had a strange look on his face. What's going on? He and Su Chan looked at each other and said, let's go and have a look. The two of them ran all the way. When they arrived at the gate of the Taoist temple, they directly flew in without pushing the door open. As soon as they entered, Li Yundong heard the sound of an opera. A woman was singing an opera. Li Yundong couldn't hear the lyrics clearly, but he could vaguely tell that it was quite lively. Li Yundong felt more and more strange. He didn't know what had happened to the Fox Zen school. He made a silent gesture to Su Chan, and the two of them hid in the darkness, holding their breath and quietly moving forward. They went all the way to the lobby of the Taoist temple and saw that a stage had been set up in the Yinyang Taoist field, where Li Yundong had fought against the heroes before. On the stage, a woman in costume was singing. Below the stage, a group of people were playing jinghu, eru, banhu, jubin, bowls and drums. Li Yundong looked over and felt that the woman singing on the stage was a little familiar. He couldn't help asking in a low voice in surprise, who is this woman? Why does she look a little familiar? Su Chan's eyes widened as she said, isn't that my sixth Sherbua, Chao Yi? Li Yundong was shocked. In his impression, Chao Yi, the sixth Sherbua of the Fox Zen school, was dignified and steady. She was a person who could be entrusted with important things, but at this time the sect had suddenly changed. How could she put on a costume and sing? This is too funny, isn't it? Li Yundong saw that the beautiful and dignified sixth Sherbua Chao Yi was walking on the stage as smoothly as water, and her sleeves were like clouds and mist. She had a profound foundation. Even if she was not a professional, she was still a veteran fan. Chao Yi waved her sleeves on the stage and covered her face with them. She sighed and sang, crying, husband, you are a short-lived ghost. You don't know how to cheat others, but you do know how to cheat your wife. We have the heart to protect your little girl, but there is no one in your family who can do anything. The mother-in-law is always looking for trouble, and the sister-in-law likes to scold people. The old man is 60 years old this year. I eat oranges and he peels them for me. I thought to myself that there was nothing else to do at such an old age, but I never thought that he would be born with no future. If it weren't for the fact that we knew, my enemy, you would have been cuckolded after you died. This part of the opera was sung with a long and clear voice. Li Yundong could hear it clearly. He suddenly took a deep breath and the corners of his eyes twitched. He said, Isn't this the little widow visits the grave? Why is she singing this play at this time? This is too unreliable. Su Chan pointed to the troupe below the stage and suddenly said, isn't that my third Sherbua Zhuang Yiting, fourth Sherbua Zhang Sun Hong, and fifth Sherbua Lu Yuehong? Li Yundong looked over and saw a few women in Taoist robes sitting in the troupe. They were Zhuang Yiting, Zhang Sun Hong, and Lu Yuehong. One of them was playing the jinghu, one was beating the clapboard, and the other was beating the drum. When they saw Chao Yi singing the best part, they even cheered and shook their heads, looking very intoxicated. At this time, Li Yundong's mind was completely in a mess. He said, What the hell is going on? He was in a daze when he saw that Chao Yi had already finished singing. There was a burst of cheers and applause below the stage. A young disciple of the Fox Zen school said loudly, Sixth Sherbua, your singing is getting better and better. On the stage, Chao Yi covered her face with her sleeves and smiled, flirting with the female disciples below the stage. Her eyes narrowed, she pointed softly and said coquettishly, You devil. There was a burst of laughter below the stage. Li Yundong almost fainted when he saw this scene. Just as he was about to go out and ask what was going on, he saw third Sherbua Zhuang Yiting stand up and say, Let's stop here. It's time to burn paper money for master. She was quite tall, about 1.78 meters. Her voice was neutral and her words were convincing. After Zhuang Yiting finished speaking, the people below the stage immediately agreed. They took off their costumes one after another, put on their Taoist robes and came to the side of the stage. Only then did Li Yundong notice that there was a simple spiritual platform next to the stage. In the middle of the spiritual platform, there was a photo of Lu Yi, the leader of the sect. Under the photo was a coffin with gold threads, and on both sides of the coffin were two large iron buckets. After Chao Yi changed into her Taoist robe, she took all the Shiji, Shimi, and disciples to the front of the spiritual platform and knelt down neatly. Several senior disciples knelt in the middle and threw the paper money into the sky. Then all the disciples began to cry loudly. For a moment, the sound of crying was really loud in the Fox Zen school. It was heart-wrenching, and even the little girl's eyes were a little red. After crying for a long time, the paper money was burned out, and Chow Yi said loudly, "Stop." The crying of this group of disciples suddenly stopped. The disciples who had been crying and rolling on the ground immediately got up and returned to the stage. They picked up their musical instruments, and a curious disciple asked, "Hey, what's the next performance?" The disciple who had been asked rolled his eyes and said, "Nonsense, there's no need to ask. We'll watch the door later." After a while, the troupe was ready again, and all the disciples of the Fox Zen school took their places. Li Yundong was amazed when he saw them crying and stopping as they pleased. They were even more professional than professional mourners. Just as he was stunned, he saw the door creaking again. This time it was not Chow Yi who was singing but Fifth Sherbua Lu Yuehong. Chow Yi sat down and played the small drum seriously. Li Yundong's eyes widened as he saw Lu Yuehong singing. "I got angry as I talked." The water caltrop fell on the flat slope. After breaking the mirror frame was broken. The oil and powder on my head were splashed down. "I can't beat you, so I won't. Second sister, I'm going to do something upstairs." At the end of the song, the people below the stage suddenly joined in and sang, "Do something, ah hey h." Li Yundong suddenly took 3 steps back and almost fainted on the spot. Fortunately, Su Chan supported him so he didn't fall to the ground. Seeing that Li Yundong had lost his composure, Su Chan couldn't help asking, "What are they singing?" The corners of Li Yundong's eyes twitched and he stammered, "Wang's sister Wang misses her husband, /7854627895541." Chapter 283. Go to watch net. Although Su Chan was inexperienced, she could tell what the plain Wang Erji misses her husband was just by hearing the name. She immediately said with her eyes wide open, "Grandmaster just died. How could they sing this play? This is too reckless, isn't it?" Li Yundong took a deep breath. He was already a little unhappy in his heart. No matter what, the Fox Zen school had suddenly undergone a great change. It was fine that these guys didn't observe filial piety, but they actually sang such a vulgar song. It was really hateful. Li Yundong's face darkened and he coughed. His voice was not loud, but it was clearly heard by the disciples of the Fox Zen school. Go to watch net. Chow Yi was the most powerful among these people. She immediately shouted in a low voice, "Who is it?" She threw away the things in her hand and jumped in the direction of the voice. Just as she was about to make a move, she suddenly saw Li Yundong looking at her in the darkness. Chow Yi was shocked and immediately stopped. She bowed respectfully and said, "Leader?" Then she nodded to Su Chan, who was beside Li Yundong, with a smile. Li Yundong nodded to her with a sullen face, while Su Chan bowed respectfully to Chow Yi. After returning the greeting, Chow Yi turned around and said to the other disciples who were about to rush over, "Don't worry, the leader is back." When the disciples of the Fox Zen school heard that the new leader had returned, they all breathed a sigh of relief and came up to greet Li Yundong. After returning the greetings one by one, Li Yundong waved to them and said, "You guys go ahead. Chow Yi, stay here for a moment. I have something to ask you." Chow Yi nodded. After instructing the other disciples to leave, she said respectfully to Li Yundong, "Leader, what can I do for you?" Li Yundong asked in a deep voice, "I didn't want to get involved at first. Moreover, I just took over as the leader of the Fox Zen school, so it can be said that I don't know anything. If it weren't for your repeated requests, I wouldn't have become the leader of the Fox Zen school. But now that I'm the leader, I want to ask, why do you sing such a play in public when the Fox Zen school has suddenly undergone a great change and the former leader has just passed away? Don't you think it's inappropriate?" Chow Yi saw that Li Yundong's face had been sullen and his eyes were unkind, so she felt a little uneasy. Although Li Yundong was young, he had single-handedly fought against the powerful enemies of all the major sections. All the people of the Fox Zen school had seen this, and they all respected and feared him. Therefore, when Li Yundong pulled a long face, although Chow Yi was older, she felt that this young leader had a dignified aura, which made her feel uneasy and fearful. Watch net. Hearing Li Yundong's words, she immediately breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Leader, you don't know. For us cultivators, death is like an extinguished lamp. Once our corporeal body is destroyed, we just need to find a place to bury it. In fact, we don't really care about these funeral matters. It's just that the former sect leader once told us that if he died, we should do as the Romans do and watch over his spirit for a night and sing opera for him." Li Yundong frowned and said, "There's no need to sing. The little widow visits the grave and Wang Erji misses her husband. Chow Yi laughed dryly and said, but the former leader loved this kind of drama the most. Li Yundong suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air and thought to himself, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, so that's how it is. I was wrong about you. However, you have just experienced a fierce battle. Everyone go back to rest. Chow Yi smiled and said, the sect leader sympathizes with us, so we should respect him. However, the former sect leader gave us an order first. Please forgive us for not respecting him. After all, Master's life is as important as a mountain. I hope the sect leader can understand. Li Yundong sighed and said, well, but you should also change to something else. Don't always sing this kind of drama. If it gets out, it will have a bad influence. Chow Yi smiled bitterly and said, our Fox Zen school is a hidden sect. Except for Shimi Wushuang, no one else has ever left the mountain. We grew up here and everything was taught by the sect leader Shibua, including these plays. We know as many as he teaches us. Li Yundong couldn't help interrupting her. You mean apart from these plays you don't know anything else? Chow Yi nodded vigorously. Li Yundong couldn't help but press his throbbing temples with his hand. With a defeated expression on his face, he said with a wry smile, forget it, don't sing anymore. Anyway, you have already sung before. You can keep vigil and do something else to replace it. What else did the former sect leader like to do when he was alive? You can help him do it. Chow Yi thought for a moment and said, okay. After that, she turned around and said loudly, attention everyone. The sect leader said that we don't need to sing anymore. Let's do what the former sect leader liked to do when he was alive. It can be considered as helping him keep vigil. The disciples of the Fox Zen school roared in agreement. They quickly dismantled the stage and then carried out many tables and chairs from the Taoist temple and placed them in front of the altar. Li Yundong was dumbfounded as he watched them set up tables and chairs, and then spread the wide tablecloth on the table. 2 disciples carried 4 suitcases and put them on the table. Then the group of people began to build the Great Wall in high spirits. Go to see. Li Yundong asked, what are they doing? Chow Yi blinked her eyes and said, playing mahjong. The former sect leader liked playing mahjong best. Li Yundong almost fainted. He groaned, covered his eyes with his hand, waved his hand and said, forget it, I can't control you. You can do whatever you want. Chow Yi nodded and was about to turn around to leave when Li Yundong remembered the trouble he had caused in Shiyuan Temple. He said, by the way, does the Fox Zen school have any liquid funds now? Unexpectedly, as soon as Li Yundong mentioned this, Chow Yi immediately poured out her grievances and said, oh, sect leader, you've hit the nail on the head. The money of our sect has always been managed by the sect leader. The former sect leader Lu Yi took all the money, but we don't have a penny with us. Let's not talk about other things. Look at this scene. In addition to our own sect's people, there are also some temporarily hired actors from outside, and this stage and platform are all temporarily rented with borrowed money. We haven't paid for them yet. Li Yundong was shocked. There are actors on this mountain who can perform as guests? And things like the stage and the altar can be rented? Chow Yi looked at Li Yundong with a puzzled expression and said, Mount Tianlong is a tourist attraction. There are many shops nearby and many of them are Taoist rites. These guys usually act as monks and Taoists when they have nothing to do. Occasionally they also act as actors. As Chow Yi spoke, she began to complain again, oh, sect leader, you don't know how black-hearted these guys are. They charge 500 yuan for the altar and the stage for one night. Isn't this daylight robbery? We usually see them all the time, but they are so black-hearted. How can we have this kind of money? Li Yundong was dumbfounded when he heard this. What's going on? I wanted to ask them for money, but in the end I was the one who asked for it? Isn't this too exaggerated? Chow Yi acted as if she hadn't seen Li Yundong's expression. She sighed and said, everyone in the Fox Zen school is counting on you now. Don't say anything else, at least pay for the stage and the altar. Li Yundong subconsciously touched his pocket and took out a small stack of red notes. He was afraid of being poor and always carried them with him for self-defense. He thought to himself, after all, I'm the leader of the Fox Zen school, so I can't be too stingy. Anyway, I don't have much money, so I'll just pay it first and get it back later. Chow Yi was overjoyed to take the money. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly thought of something. She turned around and said, by the way, sect leader, you might as well go to the room of the former sect leader, Lu Yi. All the money of our Fox Zen school is kept by him. He usually keeps a list in his bookshelf. Sect leader, you'll know when you see it. Only then did Li Yundong feel relieved. He thought to himself, fortunately there are assets left behind. Otherwise, on the first day of this inexplicable sect leader, I would have lost a lot of money. That would have been very depressing. Not to mention anything else, if I were to support more than a dozen people, I would be poor. Li Yundong waved his hand at Chao Yi and said, I see. You go ahead. I'll go to the study of the former sect leader myself. Chao Yi turned around and left with a smile. As soon as she walked into the Taoist field, she saw the other disciples of the sect shouting at her, Chao Yi Shibua, come here quickly. We need one more. Chao Yi immediately ran over excitedly, sat down, and began to build the Great Wall with great proficiency. After grabbing a few cards, she laughed loudly, pushed the cards and shouted, Draw yourself, 3 yuan, mix one color. Give me money, give me money. Li Yundong stared blankly and thought to himself, she won't use the money I gave her to play cards, will she? Didn't she say that they had no money? While he was thinking, he heard the other disciples crying and shouting, 6 Shibua, aren't you being too cruel? Where do we get the money to give you? Chao Yi stood up, waved the money in her hand and said, Well, the sect leader is kind and has specially given us money. Take it and use it first. These female disciples were immediately overjoyed. They rushed forward and distributed all the money. Then they cupped their hands and thanked Li Yundong from afar. Li Yundong was already dumbfounded. Seeing them salute him and thank him, he had no choice but to force a smile and return the salute with a dry smile. Seeing him like this, Su Chan, who was standing to one side, wanted to laugh but didn't dare. She lowered her head, but her shoulders kept shaking. Li Yundong had been completely defeated by the guys of the Fox Zen school. He pretended to be angry and glared at Su Chan. Laugh your ass. So this is your Fox Zen school? What kind of people are they? Each one is more unreliable than the other. Su Chan giggled and said, It's useless for you to criticize me. I left the sect when I was very young. After returning to the Fox Zen school, I didn't go out at all. How would I know what the Shirboss and Shirboss are like? Li Yundong rubbed his temples and turned to walk toward the backyard of the Taoist temple. But after walking for a while, he heard Chao Yi laugh again. Nonsense, it's all the same kind of self-groping. Give me money. The disciples of the other 3 families complained, 6 Shibua, you're cheating. Why is it all the same kind of big 3 yuan and all the same kind of self-groping? That's right. Besides, how can I give you money for this whole note? Are you an idiot? Can't you use scissors to cut it up and give it to me bit by bit? A third Shiji is really smart. Good idea. Li Yundong almost staggered. He turned around abruptly, his face full of rage. He wanted to shout, Smart my ass. That's money. Do you think it's paper chips? As soon as his words reached his throat, he heard Chao Yi yell, You are all idiots. Can money be cut? Can it still be used if it's cut? Can't you use the branch as a bargaining chip? We'll settle the score after the fight. The other disciples immediately smiled and praised, 6 Shibua is really smart. Good idea, good idea. Li Yundong swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and looked at the smart disciples of the Fox Zen school speechlessly. He shook his head and turned to continue walking inside. But after a few steps, he heard the female disciple who had said that she would cut the banknotes say loudly, Ha ha Chen-hu. 6th martial uncle, no matter how great your great 3 primordial purity is, it can't compare to my heavenly beard. Give me money. The other 3 all cursed, Chen-hu? I'm a 9-tailed celestial fox. Do you think you're a mystical silver fox? B*****, you actually lost everything. We have no money. What should we do? Hey, by the way, the leader has money. Let's borrow it from him. Yes, where is the leader? Where is the leader? Hey, where is the leader? Hey, leader, please wait. I have something to discuss with you. When Li Yundong heard these words, he didn't dare to stay any longer. He immediately walked faster and faster, as if he was avoiding ghosts, and quickly escaped. He took a few turns and got rid of these guys. Then he held his head with both hands and screamed, Oh my God, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? These people are too stupid, aren't they? At this time, Su Chan couldn't help laughing out loud. / 7854627895541. Chapter 284. Go to watch net. Li Yundong glared at Su Chan. Laugh? How dare you laugh? Su Chan immediately covered her mouth, but her eyes were still smiling like crescent moons. From time to time she would make a snorting sound. Watch net. 7K, Li Yundong was so angry that he laughed. I used to think that you were the most unreliable fox spirit in the world. I didn't expect that the fox spirits of the Fox Zen school were even more unreliable than you. Is this a fine tradition of the Fox Zen school? Su Chan wrapped her hands around his arm and said with a smile, who told you to be the leader of our Fox Zen school now? Besides, my master said that most of my Sherboy and the others have never left the Fox Zen school, so they are a little strange. Please forgive them. Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, they are more than a little strange. It's simply bizarre. He sighed and shook his head. Forget it. Do you know where the former sect leader's room is? Su Chan smiled and said, of course I know. After that, she took Li Yundong's hand through a corridor, turned a corner, and pointed to an unlocked room. This is it. Li Yundong pushed the door open and walked in. Although the furnishings in the room were simple, the decoration was full of classical charm. There were rockery and strange stones on the pot rack in the corner, which looked very elegant. Li Yundong walked through the front hall and into the study at the back. He saw a desk with ink, paper, and inkstone on it. Next to it was a bamboo bookshelf with some thread-bound books. He walked up to it and rummaged through it. Sure enough, he found a small purple-gold wooden box in the bookshelf. The box was about 8 inches long, 5 inches wide, and 5 inches high. There was a small copper lock hanging on the box. Li Yundong stretched out his fingers to pull it open, only to find that a row of runes suddenly lit up on the copper lock. Don't pull it too hard, Su Chan said. There's a rune array on it. Li Yundong put down the wooden box in his hand, looked around, and said, there should be a key there. Let's find it. Su Chan helped him search for a while and found a copper key the size of a pinky finger in a book on the bookshelf. She smiled happily and said, I found it. Take a look and see if this works. Li Yundong took the key and said with a smile, it's so complicated. It seems that there are treasures inside. Su Chan nodded curiously. Yeah. Li Yundong opened the copper lock with a click, took a deep breath and opened the small wooden box. He took a closer look and saw that there was an ID card at the top of the small wooden box. Below the ID card were several bank books, and below the bank books was a stack of white paper. Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, your former leader is dead. What's the use of keeping the passbook? Unless there's a password on it, we can't withdraw the money. As he spoke, he took out his ID card and bank book, put the ID card aside and opened the last page of the bank book. He took a closer look and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The balance on the bank book was 328 yuan. No way. Li Yundong's eyes widened. This is an empty passbook. He quickly opened the other 2 bank books and flipped to the last page with words. Without exception, there was a balance of 1 or 2 yuan. Li Yundong felt a chill run down his spine. No way. He didn't leave a single cent? What the hell? Su Chan couldn't laugh anymore. She quickly said, look at what's written on the paper below. Li Yundong opened it and saw that it was a lease contract for the Taoist temple of the Fox Zen school. Li Yundong looked at the rental price and was immediately shocked. 35 million yuan for 5 years. Then he looked at the expiration date and was shocked again. It was next month. Good heavens, misfortune never comes alone and blessings never come in pairs. Li Yundong took the contract and tilted his head to look at Su Chan. Why do I feel like I've boarded a pirate ship? Su Chan said angrily, don't say that about our Fox Zen school. It's not easy for Grandmaster to run this sect alone. Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, well, now it's my turn to take over. Where can I get more than 5 million yuan? Su Chan also said worriedly, yes, if it were 10 or 20,000 yuan, it would be fine. But what about more than 5 million yuan? She thought about it with a sad face. Suddenly, she jumped up and said, why don't we go to Sherboy and the others to discuss it? Li Yundong shook his head like a rattle. Forget it. I guess your former leader used a paternalistic management method. He didn't let them interfere in anything and took care of everything by himself. As a result, they seem to be very powerful, but in fact they are just like you. They have never seen the world and don't understand the ways of the world. At first I thought Chowie was better, but now it seems that... Su Chan jumped up and said coquettishly, don't say that. Li Yundong laughed and spread his hands. Okay, I won't say it. But how can we solve this problem? Our Fox Zen school will soon be sleeping on the street. Su Chan rolled her eyes and said, then let them live in our house. Li Yundong immediately shook his head and glared at Su Chan. Are you crazy? Do you think it's 2 or 3 people? If more than a dozen people live here, how can they live? Who will sleep on the floor or me? Su Chan pouted and sat on the chair. This won't work, that won't work. Then what should we do? Li Yundong also pulled over a mahogany chair and sat down next to Su Chan with a sigh. Yes, what should we do? What you said before was right. If you haven't heard the Tao, it's difficult to learn the Dharma. if you've heard the Tao, it's difficult to get money. How am I supposed to get money in one day? I can't take such a group of vixens and live on the street, can I? Hey, do you think that when we quarreled with the boy who pursued you, I said that I would live on the street and it immediately came true? Karma shouldn't have come so fast, right? Su-chan smiled and spat. Bah, don't talk nonsense. You're my hero. How can you live on the street? You must have a way. Li Yundong sighed and frowned. He was thinking hard about a way. Suddenly he had an idea. He slapped his thigh and laughed. I have a way. Su-chan touched her thigh and said loudly, if you have a way, why did you slap my thigh? Li Yundong quickly rubbed it for her and said with a smile, I was too excited. I accidentally hurt myself. Su-chan pouted, but she was curious about what Li Yundong had thought of, so she asked, what did you think of just now? Li Yundong smiled and said, when I went up the mountain from the Fox Zen school, I went through the back door of the Fox Zen school. I saw a lot of antiques, calligraphy and paintings in the secret room. Although, I broke some of them, I think there should be some intact ones in there that can be sold for money. Go to Kanban. 7KOM. Go to Kanban. 7KOM. Color. Paper. Learn net. Super_speed. More. If I sell any one of them, I will be a millionaire. Su-chan was very simple. Seeing that Li Yundong had come up with this idea of robbing the east wall to pay the west wall, she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. The little girl only felt that it was good that her master could solve this problem. As for what she sold, it was the son selling the father's field. Anyway, it was not her savings, so she didn't feel bad about it. Su-chan beamed and said, where is it? Where is it? Take me to see it. I've never been there before. Li Yundong thought of a solution and suddenly felt more confident. He laughed, waved his hand and said, well, I'll take you to see it. The two of them went out of the room talking and laughing all the way, but there was no more gloom. Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh in his heart, the ancients are right. It's hard to be a hero without a penny. No matter how good he is at fighting and how powerful his shentong is, so what? Without money it's all in vain. Li Yundong and Su-chan came to the back door of the Taoist temple. Then he held the little girl's hand, ran his chi and flew up. Su-chan was surprised and happy. She said, Yundong, you can fly now? I remember when you couldn't fly and needed my help. Li Yundong laughed and said, if I can't even fly, how can I drive away the enemies of the Fox Zen school? As he said this, he smiled at Su-chan and said, you used to take me flying. Now it's my turn to take you flying. Su-chan smiled sweetly and looked at Li Yundong. The two of them felt as if they had drunk honey, and a strong sweetness seeped into their hearts. The two of them flew along the hillside to the hidden entrance of the cave. As soon as Li Yundong pushed aside the grass and leaves covering the entrance of the cave, he saw a group of black shadows flying out. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat and he immediately pulled Su-chan far away. When the two of them flew away, he found that a flock of birds had flown out of the cave, and then a group of monkeys ran out with a squeak. Li Yundong laughed and said, it turns out that there is a group of guests inside. I thought there were enemies. Su-chan's eyes were sharp. She found that the monkeys seemed to be holding something in their hands. She said, these monkeys seem to be holding something. Li Yundong didn't pay attention to it and said with a smile, maybe it's fruit? The two of them flew back to the entrance of the cave and walked along the corridor. After walking for a while, Li Yundong came to the big stone room where he had practiced the heavenly Jindan technique. Su-chan saw Lin Youfa, who had been dead for a long time, at a glance. She cried out and couldn't help sighing, alas, he was the leader of a sect. I didn't expect that he would die without a burial place. Yundong, find a place to bury him, okay? Li Yundong sighed and said, you're kind. He hurt you but you're speaking up for him. Su-chan took Li Yundong's arm and said, death is the most important thing. Let's let bygones be bygones. Look, aren't we all right now? Li Yundong nodded and said, well, you're right. We'll find a place to bury him later so that he can rest in peace. After that, he took Su-chan's hand, pointed to the words on the wall and said with a smile, look at what's on it. Before, Li Yundong had never told Su-chan that he had seen the heavenly Jindan technique carved by the mystical silver fox here. The purpose was to give the little girl a surprise. Sure enough, from the beginning, Su-chan's whole body shook and her eyes widened. When she saw the last part, she was so shocked that her face turned red, her sinuses closed and she gasped for breath. She screamed, grabbed Li Yundong's hand tightly with both hands and kept shouting, Yundong, Yundong, this was left by the mystical silver fox. Oh my god, it turns out that this is the reason why our Fox Zen school hasn't moved away for thousands of years. Su Chan's eyes were shining as she looked at every word on the wall. Her face was full of excitement and yearning. After looking back and forth several times, her emotions slowly calmed down. She said with longing, if only I could be like the mystical silver fox. Li Yundong gently stroked her hair and said softly, that day will come. Su Chan nodded hard and said, well, you've become so strong. I want to become stronger too. Li Yundong pointed at the tip of the little girl's nose with his finger and said with a smile, okay, I'll urge you. Su Chan giggled and said, I want you to teach me cultivation in the future. I used to teach you and you'll teach me in the future. Li Yundong chuckled and said, okay, but you can't be lazy. The two of them talked and laughed as they walked inside. Along the way, mice ran out from time to time in the tunnel. Li Yundong felt a little strange. It's strange. There were no mice in there last time. Su Chan said, it must be because you didn't close the door of the stone cave, so monkeys, birds, and mice all ran in. Li Yundong said with a smile, that must be it. But before he could finish his words, his face suddenly changed dramatically. He pulled Su Chan and ran inside crazily. Su Chan shouted in confusion, what's wrong? What happened? Li Yundong didn't say anything. When he pulled Su Chan down to the next floor of the stone cave, he suddenly stayed at the door of the stone room as if he had been hit by the body-fixing spell. The stone room was full of mice, and these mice were frantically gnawing at everything that had fallen to the ground. Li Yundong took a deep breath and covered Su Chan's ears. Then, with a fierce roar, he killed all the mice in the stone room in an instant. Li Yundong watched as the mice fell to the side without making a sound. The corner of his eyes twitched and he said to Su Chan, hurry up and see if there's anything intact. Su Chan was also dumbfounded at this time. She quickly squatted down and rummaged through the mouse corpses all over the ground. The two of them searched back and forth in the stone room several times. When they stood up and looked at each other, Li Yundong stared at Su Chan with his eyes wide open. Su Chan also stared at Li Yundong with her eyes wide open. The two of them shook their heads at the same time. Li Yundong suddenly let out a long sigh and wailed, oh my god, I've really become a loser. There's not even a single intact antique calligraphy or painting. Isn't this too tragic? // 7854627895541. Chapter 285. Go to watch net. Looking at the mess in the stone room, Li Yundong felt like he was going crazy. Su Chan couldn't help but sigh and say, what should we do? Li Yundong let out a long sigh and said, it's all my fault for not closing the door. What a tragedy. As he spoke, he casually picked up a painting. It was Wu Daozi's Heavenly King sending his child painting that he had seen before. The head of the character on the painting had been bitten by a mouse, and there was a hole in it. It was truly a tragic sight. Watch net. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6 he smiled bitterly and said, the historians and collectors of China will kill me. Wu Daozi's famous painting was destroyed just like that. Su Chan said cautiously, maybe it's fake? Li Yundong turned his head and smiled bitterly at her. You really know how to comfort people. Alas, don't say it. This place was probably the meticulous collection of the previous leaders of the Fox Zen School. But now, less than 2 days after I became the leader of the Fox Zen School, these treasures have been completely destroyed by me. I think I can be honored as the most prodigal leader in the history of Fox Zen School. Su Chan had left the Fox Zen School when she was a child. Although her sense of belonging to the sect was strong, it was not as strong as her feelings for Li Yundong. She smiled awkwardly for a while and said, why don't we leave here first? Li Yundong also looked at the broken antiques and paintings on the ground, which were very eye-catching and annoying. He shook his head and said, let's go. I'll think of another way. There's really no such thing as getting rich overnight in this world. He walked to the door of the stone room, looked back and said, alas, if the other people of the Fox Zen School find out, I'll have to step down immediately, won't I? Su Chan immediately said loudly, no, you saved our Fox Zen School. Sherbua and the others won't do that. Li Yundong chuckled and said, you silly girl, what kind of society are we in now? Come on, in this economic society you have to be rich to be the boss. No matter how good you are at fighting, if you can't even feed your underlings, who would want to work for you? It's already very difficult for me to raise a little girl like you, let alone such a large group of people. With that, Li Yundong pinched the little girl's nose with a smile. Su Chan screamed and jumped away. Her eyes were rolling in her eye sockets as if she was thinking about something. Li Yundong smiled and turned to walk out of the cave, saying, what are you thinking about? Let's go. Su Chan suddenly had an idea. She pinched her fingers and ignited a ball of fire in her palm. She threw it into the stone room with a bang. The stone room was originally made of wooden shelves and paper paintings. As soon as it came into contact with the fire, it immediately burst into flames. Hearing the sound, Li Yundong turned around in surprise, only to see the little girl standing at the door of the stone room, clapping her hands proudly and laughing as if she had done something amazing. Watch net. Li Yundong stared blankly at the raging fire in the stone room and stammered, "What are you doing?" Su Chan turned around with a proud look on her face. "They won't know if I burn them all. This is called destroying the evidence." Li Yundong sucked in a breath of cold air. "Are you even crazier than me? Don't you know that some calligraphy and paintings can be repaired and some parts of antiques can also be repaired? There's no way to save them at all." Su Chan's smile froze on her face. She quickly lowered her head, looked up at Li Yundong timidly, and then quickly lowered her eyes again. She twisted the corner of her clothes with her fingers and said weakly, "Did I do something wrong again?" The expression on Li Yundong's face was very interesting. He didn't know whether he should cry or laugh. After a long time, he swallowed hard and said in a hoarse voice, "Just now, the most tragic catastrophe in the history of the Chinese antique industry happened. And I am the main culprit and you are the accomplice. No, I just didn't close the door but you set it on fire. You are the main culprit and I am the accomplice." The more Li Yundong spoke, the more righteous he became. The more Su Chan listened, the lower her head was. Tears were about to fall and she muttered in a weak voice, "I also want to help you." Seeing the girl like this, Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. He held the girl in his arms, pinched the flesh next to her cheek and said with a smile, Okay, I am the main culprit and you are the accomplice, okay?" Su Chan smiled through her tears and raised her head. "Sir, you are the best to me." Li Yundong put on a serious face and said deliberately, "Don't think that you can escape the punishment of law and morality just because you are an accomplice. If you behave like this today, you will definitely be nailed to the pillar of shame in the history of Chinese antiques." Li Yundong's harsh words made the girl stare blankly. After a long time she asked weakly, "I will be nailed to the pillar of shame because I am an accomplice. What will you do if you are the main culprit?" Li Yundong said seriously, "I will be nailed to the pillar of shame." Su Chan laughed out loud, hugged Li Yundong and said in a sweet voice, "No matter where I am as long as I am with Yundong." Li Yundong laughed and shook his head helplessly. "I really lost you. In the future please be more careful when you do things." Su Chan pouted and said, "Didn't you cause this situation because you didn't close the door?" Li Yundong glared at her and said guiltily, "Don't say that. If others find out what we did tonight, they will be arrested and sentenced to 700 or 800 years in prison." Su Chan rolled her eyes and giggled. "It doesn't matter. There is no evidence now." Li Yundong coughed and asked seriously, "Where were you tonight?" Su Chan smiled and said, "With my master." Li Yundong asked seriously again, "Then where is your master?" Su Chan said cleverly, "I was looking for something in the leader's study." Li Yundong nodded with satisfaction. Well, you are worth teaching. Let's go. Remember, tonight we didn't see anything, we didn't hear anything, so we don't know anything." Su Chan hurriedly nodded her head like a chicken pecking at grains. After the two heinous criminals burned the evidence, they repeatedly compared their confessions, then looked at each other with a tacit understanding. They chuckled and walked along the tunnel out of the cave. Go to see net. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6. As soon as he walked out of the cave, Li Yundong found that the sky was already a little bright. He flew down the mountain with Su Chan and returned to the Taoist temple. The two of them walked to the leader's study like thieves. As soon as they arrived at the door, they saw Chao Yi coming up to them. At this time, Chao Yi had already taken off her costume and was wearing a Taoist robe. When she saw Li Yundong, she went up to him. The first thing she said scared Li Yundong a lot. "Leader, you are here? We looked for you all night last night but we don't know where you went. We were so worried." When Li Yundong heard this, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He thought to himself, "No way. We just compared our confessions and now we don't need to use them? Did we work for nothing?" Li Yundong forced himself to calm down. He asked with a glimmer of hope, "Have you been waiting here for a long time?" Chao Yi smiled and said, "Not long." Li Yundong breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good." Chao Yi immediately smiled and said, "About half a night." "Half a night? Is this not long?" Li Yundong's forehead was full of sweat. He wanted to laugh but the corners of his mouth twitched and he couldn't. Seeing Li Yundong's strange expression, Chao Yi asked, "Leader, where did you go last night?" Li Yundong forced a smile. His mind was racing, but he couldn't find a good excuse to dodge the question. Fortunately, Su-chan reacted quickly. She said shyly, 6 Sherwood don't ask. At first, Chao Yi looked at Su-chan with some confusion, and then looked at Li Yundong. She suddenly understood. Hey, what can 2 devoted lovers do in private for one night? Chao Yi smiled ambiguously and said, Oh, I see. Li Yundong also laughed dryly with her for a while. The corners of his mouth moved, but he didn't smile. The 3 of them laughed at each other for a while. Li Yundong quickly changed the topic and said, What do you want from me? Chao Yi sighed and said, Thousands of words, but in the end, it all comes down to one word. Money. When the people we invited saw that we weren't going to sing, they shouted that they wanted to leave. Before the performance was finished, they wanted to charge us for the whole performance and the rental of various materials. Li Yundong couldn't help asking, Didn't I give you money? Are you using it to play mahjong? Chao Yi smiled bitterly and said, Leader, it's just entertainment. Do you really want to spend the money on your own? Besides, we inner disciples don't go down the mountain all day long. What's the use of money? It's nothing more than a flower. However, the money you gave us is not enough. Li Yundong asked, How much do you need? After saying this, his heart was beating like a drum. If it was an astronomical number, then he, the leader of the Fox Zen School who had just ascended to the position of leader of the Fox Zen School, would be disgraced. While he was feeling uneasy, Chao Yi gestured a number and said, 38 yuan. Li Yundong almost fainted. He cried out involuntarily, Don't you have 38 yuan? Chao Yi shook her head like a rattle. No, the leader of the Fox Zen School is responsible for our food, clothing, and accommodation. We don't need to take a penny. Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, These guys are really stingy. They want 38 yuan. Chao Yi also smiled bitterly and said, They also said that your Taoist temple occupies such a large mountain, but you are not willing to give them 38 yuan. Who would believe that you can't afford it? How stingy. Li Yundong was completely speechless. He pressed his forehead with one hand and thought to himself, What a tragedy. I'm probably the poorest leader in all of history, right? Li Yundong touched his pocket and found that he was also penniless. He only had a credit card that he always carried with him. He sighed and said, Where is there an ATM nearby? I'll go and get some money. Chao Yi said, There is a hotel near the foot of the mountain. Do you need me to go with you, leader? When Li Yundong heard the word leader at this time, he felt that it was very harsh. He waved his hand and said, No, I know where it is. Su-chan can accompany me. As he said this, he quickly pulled Su-chan out of the Taoist temple. Chao Yi looked at their backs from behind and muttered to herself, One of them still looks like a virgin, while the other is still full of vitality. They don't look like they had sex last night. By the way, do they like other things? While Chao Yi was thinking about it, Li Yundong had already left the Taoist temple with Su-chan. After they went down the mountain, they withdrew money from the Union Pay ATM set up in the hotel at the foot of the mountain, and then returned to the Taoist temple to pay. When the money was paid, the cashier looked at Li Yundong and said disdainfully, Seeing that you have such a big business at such a young age, I thought you were very powerful. I didn't expect that you would even be stingy with 38 yuan for a small business like ours. You are really stingy. After that, he walked away. Li Yundong's face darkened, but Su-chan looked at him and whispered, Yundong, don't pay attention to this kind of person. You will definitely be very rich in the future. You didn't know anything about cultivation before, but now you are already a famous cultivator in the cultivation world. I believe that even if you want to make money, you will have a very good way. Li Yundong felt much better. He thought for a moment and said, I do have a way to make money, but I lack the starting capital and I can't do it alone. I have to go back and discuss it with Zhou Qin and Ziyuan and ask them for help. Moreover, the lease of the Taoist temple of the Fox Zen School is about to expire. I have to get the money as soon as possible. As he said this, he took Su-chan to Chao Yi and told her his plan, the place where he would go to school in Tianan City, and his address. He also told her his phone number and finally left 10,000 yuan. The former leader didn't leave any money. Our Fox Zen School can't go on like this or we will starve to death. Take this money and use it first. I'll find a way to get some money. During the days I'm away, take care of the Fox Zen School for me. If anything happens, call me. If you encounter an enemy, fight if you can and run if you can't. It doesn't matter if we lose the Taoist temple of the Fox Zen School. What matters is the people. Even if we lose it, we can take it back. Chao Yi opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she saw Li Yundong leave in a hurry with Su-chan. In the end, she didn't say anything. 7854627895541. Chapter 286. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong led Su Chan back to Tianan City. As soon as they entered the house, Su Chan let out a cheer and looked around happily. She touched here and there, greedily inhaling the air in the house. It's so good to be home again. It's so comfortable at home. Li Yundong chuckled and looked around. He didn't find Ziyuan and Ruan Hongling at home. He thought to himself, could it be that these two girls are in my own house? After wandering around the living room for a while, she seemed to think of something. Then she went into Li Yundong's room. After a while, she came out with her hands behind her back and said mysteriously, "Guess what I have in my hand?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "What else can it be? Of course it's your Hello Kitty piggy bank." Su Chan pouted and took out the piggy bank behind her. "I really can't hide anything from you. It's so boring." But she soon smiled again and said, "I'll smash it and take out the money in it for you to use, okay?" Li Yundong gently stroked the little girl's hair and said with a smile, "This is your private money. Keep it. I still have money to use, so I don't need it." Su Chan nodded, looked at the piggy bank in her hand eagerly and said, "Then I'll save more money for you." Li Yundong laughed and held the little girl in his arms lovingly. "Didn't I give you that money? Silly girl." Su Chan giggled. She put her arms around Li Yundong's waist and pressed her face against his chest. She sniffed his breath and said, "Yundong, I'm so happy." Li Yundong smiled, stroked her hair and said, "We will get better and better in the future, right?" Su Chan raised her head, her face full of happiness and joy. "Yes." But not long after, she suddenly thought of something and said with a sad face, "Yundong, I miss my master. I wonder how she is." Li Yundong's face froze and he said in a deep voice, "As a senior of the Jingyi school's Linggong sect, Yen Fang has been lurking in the Fox Zen school for 9 years without being discovered. It can be seen how good her endurance is. I used to think that she would return to the Linggong sect as soon as possible, but now that I think about it, I don't think it's possible. Based on her behavior and character, she would rather betray the world than let the world betray her. Such a person is the most cunning and suspicious. She won't trust anyone, so I guess she must have a way out, and it's very likely that she hasn't returned to the Linggong sect." Speaking of this, Li Yundong also sighed and said, "If Yen Fang hides herself, it will be difficult. I don't know where to find her." Su Chan said with a worried face, "But what if she wants to go back to Linggong sect?" Li Yundong thought for a moment, then let go of Su Chan and said, "I'll go look for Ziyuan." As he spoke, he walked to the balcony and looked around. Seeing that no one was paying attention, he quickly jumped to the balcony where Ziyuan and Ruan Hongling lived. He probed around and saw that there was no one in the room, so he jumped back and shook his head at Su Chan. "No one's here." Su Chan looked disappointed, but she also knew that this matter could not be rushed. Instead, she comforted Li Yundong and said, "It's okay. Take your time." Seeing that the little girl was so sensible, Li Yundong also comforted her. Given the grudge between Yen Fang and Ao Wushuang, I don't think Yen Fang will let Ao Wushuang die so easily. Moreover, your master has only been sealed. Yen Fang is now a yang spirit body. She must find another body to possess as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the yang spirit becomes the yin spirit will run out of spiritual qi and she will not be able to find a body to possess. Then her soul will really be destroyed and she will disappear. Su Chan nodded and hugged Li Yundong tightly. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were full of worry. Li Yundong patted her back lovingly, but he couldn't help thinking, where are Ziyuan and Ruan Hongling at this time? Could it be that they have returned to the Linggong sect? Just as Li Yundong was thinking about this, in the Linggong sect of Mount Longhu, Ruan Hongling, who had just woken up from her meditation, opened her eyes. Ruan Hongling had followed Ziyuan to the Fox Zen school and witnessed an unprecedentedly fierce battle. Although most of the cultivators were experts of the younger generation, their level of fighting was extremely high, which had benefited her a lot. She followed Ziyuan back to the sect and began to meditate. When she opened her eyes again, it was already the next day. When she woke up in her room, the first thing she did was to go to the cave residence of the Linggong sect to see if Ziyuan, who was in seclusion, had come out. She went to see the net. 7 km. Ziyuan had been beaten by Li Yundong so hard that the corners of her mouth were bleeding, and her internal organs had been injured. Therefore, when she returned to the mansion, she immediately chose to go into seclusion. Ruan Hongling walked around the cave and saw that the entrance of a cave covered by a huge rock was tightly closed. She sighed faintly and thought to herself, "Sister Ziyuan, You have really sacrificed too much for this Jindan successor. The three great treasures of our Linggong sect have been destroyed, and you have been injured by him. But is it worth it for you to pay so much? Ruan Hongling's gaze fell on the spirit water pond. She saw that the two flower buds of the twin breeders, Deng Yu and Deng Jiao, were slowly growing. The two flowers were about to bloom, emitting a faint fluorescent light. She could vaguely see two tiny human figures shrinking into a ball. Ruan Hongling couldn't help smiling. Just as she was about to reach out and touch them, she heard a sudden sound of something breaking through the air outside. A woman shouted, "Ziyuan and Ruan Hongling of the Linggong sect, come out quickly." Ruan Hongling frowned and immediately walked out quickly. As soon as she walked out, she saw Zhou Ping, who had had a conflict with her before, standing in front of the mansion with a sneer. Next to her was a Taoist nun in a Taoist robe. This Taoist nun was plain-looking and had nothing in her hands. There was neither a horsetail whisk nor a sword in her hand like the others. She was just holding her sleeves, her eyelids drooping, as if she was looking down at the tip of her nose obediently. Nothing around her could attract her attention. Ruan Hongling took a closer look at her and saw a round red dot the size of a pencil between her eyebrows, which looked like a red mole. Ruan Hongling suddenly felt a chill in her heart. This was the Lingsha mole that only the direct bloodline of the head of the Jingyi school had the qualification point. Sure enough, when Zhou Ping saw Ruan Hongling coming out, she shouted, "How dare you? You've seen the lady of the earthly fire of the Jingyi school and you still haven't bowed down." Ruan Hongling was shocked. The lady of the earthly fire? Could it be the lady of the earthly fire, who was both the elder sister of the leader of the Jingyi school and the eldest sister of the leader of the Jingyi school? Ruan Hongling was looking at Zhang Ling and feeling incredulous in her heart. As a disciple of the Linggong sect of the Jingyi school, she had naturally heard of the deeds of the seniors. In the past, Ziyuan had commented on the famous cultivators in the world, and the lady of the earthly fire was among them. She remembered that Ziyuan had once said, "The lady of the earthly fire's control of fire can be said to be unparalleled in the world. She can draw out the Samadhi true fire from the ninth earth and burn everything in the world." She had originally thought that a cultivator who could cultivate fire to such a level would be arrogant and surly, or at least a person like fierce Zhang Fei. But today, it turned out to be an ordinary Taoist nun, who didn't seem to be much older than her. Zhou Ping saw that Ruan Hongling was just staring at Zhang Ling without speaking or bowing. She suddenly became furious and said, "How rude! Are all the people of the Linggong sect so rude?" Ruan Hongling withdrew her gaze and glanced at her, but she still didn't salute. Instead she said, "My sister Ziyuan is now like the leader of the Linggong sect. Even when she sees the leader of the Jingyi school, she has to salute him. I'm also her shimmy. In terms of status, I am equal to the lady of the earthly fire. Why should I salute her?" Zhou Ping was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. ***, even if the leader sees the lady of the earthly fire, he has to respectfully call her Shiji. Who do you think you are? How dare you be so rude? Ruan Hongling was born with a fiery temper. Except for Li Yundong, she had never been afraid of anyone else. She sneered and said, "When the leader of the earthly fire sees the lady of the earthly fire, he calls her Shiji. This is an internal relationship, but when my Shiji, the lady of the earthly fire, sees him, she has to salute him. This is an external relationship. Haven't you heard of the saying that there is a difference between the inside and the outside?" Zhou Ping was furious. "How dare you be so presumptuous? Do you still have our Jingyi school in your eyes? A small branch of the Jingyi school dares to be so arrogant. Fortunately, you have been in decline all these years. Otherwise, if you were allowed to be arrogant, wouldn't you be riding on the neck of the Jingyi school and peeing on it?" Ruan Hongling also said angrily, "You also know that our Linggong sect is a branch of the Jingyi school? Logically speaking, our Linggong sect is also a child of the Jingyi school. It's fine if you don't raise us, but over the years, you have seized the opportunity to suppress us. When have you ever regarded us as a branch? As the saying goes, if you treat me as a scholar of the country, I will repay you as a scholar of the country. If you treat me as a bandit, I will repay you as a bandit. You have done the first thing, but now you are blaming me for doing the second thing. Don't you think it's ridiculous? What's more, I haven't done the second thing. I'm just acting according to the law." Zhou Ping was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She pointed at Ruan Hongling and was speechless. You. She was Zhang Tianhe's Shiji and had been secretly in love with Zhang Tianhe for a long time. This time she had accompanied him down the mountain. She had thought that it would be a good job, but she hadn't expected that Zhang Tianhe would go to the Linggong sect to visit her because he admired Ziyuan's beauty and reputation. This had already made her very unhappy. But what she hadn't expected was that Zhang Tianhe would lose to Li Jiandong in the subsequent battle, and that Li Jiandong had an affair with that little B***tch. After Zhou Ping returned to Mount Longhu, the more she thought about it, the more unwilling she became. However, the leader of the Jingyi school was in seclusion, so she didn't dare to disturb him. She told Zhang Ling the whole thing with some embellishments. As Zhang Tianhe's aunt, Zhang Ling had doted on him since he was a child. When she heard this, she was immediately furious. What? The little B***tch of the Linggong sect colluded with outsiders to bully the future leader of our Jingyi school. How could this be? How could this be? After hearing this, Zhang Ling immediately brought Zhou Ping to denounce her, but she was also worried that she had made a mistake, so she let Zhou Ping speak up while she observed silently from the side. At this point, Zhang Ling had no choice but to speak. She raised her eyelids and her eyes shone brightly. She snorted coldly and said, "Little girl, you're young but you talk big. Do you think that our Jingyi school is a criminal enemy?" Ruan Hongling snorted coldly. "I wouldn't dare. If the Jingyi school regards us as national warriors, we will naturally repay them as national warriors. If they regard us as a criminal enemy..." Zhang Ling suddenly burst into laughter, which made Ruan Hongling's heart beat violently. Her eardrums felt as if they were being burned by a raging fire, and she felt a burst of heat and pain. Zhang Ling sneered and said, "What a big tone. I think your Linggong sect really has no successors and has no good discipline. Today I will discipline you on behalf of your leader." Ruan Hongling's heart trembled. Just as she was about to step back, she suddenly heard a soft voice say, "The Lady of the Earthly Fire has come. May I know what's the matter?" As soon as this voice sounded, the tense atmosphere on the field suddenly calmed down a lot. If Zhang Ling's voice was like a raging fire, extremely fierce, aggressive and making people panic, then this voice was like a clear spring, gentle and calm, making people feel relaxed and happy. For a moment, everyone turned their heads to look at the source of the voice, only to see a beautiful woman in a purple robe walking out of the cave of the Linggong sect. Every step she took gave people the feeling that she was treading on the waves. She was ethereal, like a fairy from the ninth heaven who had descended to the mortal world. This woman was none other than Ziyuan, the eldest Shiji of the Linggong sect of the Jingyi school. Chapter 287. Go to Watch Network. Zhang Ling saw that Ziyuan had an imposing manner as soon as she appeared. Although she was not as aggressive as herself, she was very difficult to deal with. She secretly nodded in her heart. It said that Ziyuan is the #1 master in the cultivation world of the younger generation. Now it seems that she deserves her reputation. It can be said that she is worthy of her reputation. Although Wang Yuanshan was a bastard who couldn't distinguish between good and evil and was in cahoots with demons, the disciple he had taught was very outstanding. Although she was secretly admiring Ziyuan in her heart, she was not polite with her words. She deliberately pretended not to know Ziyuan and asked, "Excuse me, this is?" Ziyuan smiled slightly and bowed. "I'm Ziyuan from the Linggong sect. Greetings, Jinren of the Earthly Fire." When Zhang Ling saw Ziyuan salute her in the manner of a junior greeting an elder, she also withdrew her aggressive momentum. She nodded and said politely, "It turns out to be Jinren Ziyuan. It's really better to meet you in person than to hear about you." Ziyuan smiled and said, "May I know why Jinren of the Earthly Fire has come?" Zhang Ling snorted and said, "I heard that a cultivator named Li Yundong disturbed the siege of the Fox Zen school by the 6 great sects and injured my nephew, Zhang Tianhe. I wonder if that's true?" Ziyuan lowered her eyes and said, "Yes." Zhang Ling snorted again and said, "Then let me ask you, do you know this Li Yundong?" Ziyuan's expression did not change as she said, "Yes." Zhang Ling snorted heavily and anger appeared in her eyes. "Well, you are really colluding with each other. Ziyuan, I just called you Jinren. I hope you can turn back as soon as possible. Don't mix with these demons and ghosts, and don't associate with this kind of self-deprecating cultivator. Otherwise..." Ziyuan asked lightly, "Otherwise what?" Zhang Ling pointed to the peak of Mount Longhu and said angrily, "Otherwise, your master will be your role model." Ziyuan's face was calm, but Ruan Hongling couldn't help but say angrily, "What right do you have to teach Sister Ziyuan like this? In terms of status, she is not inferior to you. In terms of cultivation methods, she may not be inferior to you." Zhang Ling threw her head back and laughed out loud. Her laughter reverberated through the mountains and caused hundreds of birds to fly out of the forest. "When I first heard about this, I didn't believe it. But now that I see your attitude, it's obvious that you have a guilty conscience. How ridiculous. As the future leader of the Linggong sect of Jingyi school, how could he degenerate himself to hang out with such a lowly person? What a disgrace to the name of our Jingyi school. Let me give you a piece of advice, Jinren Ziyuan, the sea of sin is boundless. Repent and you will be saved. Although Zhang Ling's words were vicious and harsh, Ziyuan just smiled slightly and remained calm. She bowed her head and said, "Thank you for your teachings, Lady of the Earthly Fire. Everyone has their own way of cultivation. I know very well what I'm doing. You don't need to give me any advice." Zhang Ling's expression changed and she said sternly, "Ziyuan, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. You have to understand that the succession ceremony of the head of the Linggong sect in half a year can only be carried out with the approval of our Jingyi school. Don't play with fire and bring about your own destruction. Once our Jingyi school disagrees, don't let the sect handed down by Jinren Tongtian of the Linggong sect die in your hands." After that, she flicked her sleeves and said coldly, "You're on your own. Let's go." Zhang Ling snorted heavily and turned into a beam of cyan light. Zhou Ping also looked at the two of them with a sneer, snorted, and turned into a beam of cyan light to chase after them. "Go to the internet." Seeing that the two of them had left, Ruan Hongling spat fiercely on the ground and scolded, "You be *******. Bah." But after scolding them, she turned to Ziyuan with a worried face and said, "Sister Ziyuan, although Samba is fierce, what she said is right. If the succession ceremony of the head of our Linggong sect can't be held as scheduled in half a year, the position of the head of our sect will either fall to someone else and be appointed by the people of the Jingyi school, or our Linggong sect will perish." As she said this, Ruan Hongling anxiously tugged at Ziyuan's sleeve and said, "Sister Ziyuan, do you want to watch our Linggong sect fall into the hands of others or watch the Linggong sect perish?" Ziyuan's expression was solemn. She was silent for a long time before she said, "Cultivation is difficult, and it's more difficult than going to heaven. This is the path of cultivation that I have chosen. If there are thousands of disasters, I will do my best to deal with them." Ruan Hongling said anxiously, "But what about the sect? The Jingyi school is now determined to defeat us and we are weak. What should we do?" Ziyuan sighed slightly, stroked Ruan Hongling's hair and said, "Hongling, there is no such thing as a never-ending banquet in the world, and there is no such thing as an indestructible sect. Even if it was the universe, there would be a day when it would be destroyed. If our Linggong sect is really going to perish, nothing you do will be of any use." Ruan Hongling was stunned. She said again, "Then we might as well announce to the public that our Linggong sect is an independent sect." Ziyuan shook her head and said, "No, the Jingyi school will definitely attack us. We have lost 2 of the 3 magic treasures. At this time we are no match for the Jingyi school." Ruan Hongling stomped her feet and said anxiously, "This won't do, that won't do, I'm so angry. You might be able to endure this, but I can't." As she spoke, she seemed to think of something. Her eyes lit up and she said loudly, "By the way, let's go find Li Yundong. Now that his cultivation is so powerful, he will be able to help us. This guy has a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Maybe he has a plan." Ziyuan smiled. "Didn't you hear what the Lady of the Earthly Fire said just now? If we go to find Li Yundong, it will confirm her words." Ruan Hongling said angrily, "She said that we colluded with Li Yundong, so let's show her. It was better than waiting for death. Look at the way she's talking. Even if you didn't do it, she can still blame it on you. Besides, I don't believe that you won't look for him after you come out of seclusion." Ziyuan sighed. "You're right. I'm going to look for him after I come out of seclusion. Watch net." Ruan Hongling smiled and said, "See, I was right. This guy has received so many benefits from us. It's time for him to repay us." However, Ziyuan glared at Ruan Hongling sternly. "Be *****, are you a businessman or a cultivator? How can you say such things? I'm warning you, if you say a word about this in front of him, I will immediately disown you as my shimmy." These words were extremely harsh and Ruan Hongling was frightened. She took a step back, widened her eyes and looked at Ziyuan in disbelief. "Sister Ziyuan, I won't say anything. You don't have to scare me like this, do you? You were so scary just now." Ziyuan's expression softened a lot. She said, "Just remember it. Don't mention this to him in the future. Otherwise you will drag him into the conflict of our Jingyi school. This will harm him." Ruan Hongling walked up to Ziyuan and took her hand. She couldn't help but say with tears in her eyes, "Sister Ziyuan, you always think of others like this, but who has ever thought of you?" Ziyuan sighed and stroked Ruan Hongling's hair. "I still have you to think of me, don't you? Let's go back to Mount Tianlong first and see if Li Yundong is there." If not, we'll go back to Tianan City. After that, she turned into two beams of green light and quickly left with Ruan Hongling. Just as Zi Yuan and Ruan Hongling left Mount Longhu, Li Yundong was at home, preparing to go shopping with Su Chan. But before they could go out, Li Yundong heard the buzzing sound of his cell phone. He looked around and found it vibrating in the corner of the sofa. He picked it up and saw that it was a call from Zhou Qin. When he looked again, he saw that there were more than 100 missed calls. Li Yundong quickly answered and said, "Hello?" As soon as he spoke, the other end of the line immediately fell silent. Zhou Qin seemed to take a deep breath and suppress her emotions. She said in a slightly trembling voice, You're back?" Li Yundong smiled slightly and said, "Yes, are you still worried that I won't come back?" Zhou Qin didn't speak. The silence on the phone was a little depressing. Li Yundong said with a smile, "I went out to do something before. Why did you call me?" Zhou Qin was silent for a while before she said slowly, "It's nothing. I just wanted to hear what you had to say. What have you been busy with these days?" As soon as she asked, she immediately changed her words and said, "Forget it, I shouldn't have asked." Li Yundong remembered that Zhou Qin was now his disciple. Although he hadn't officially accepted her as a disciple, their relationship was not the same as before. There were some things that he didn't need to hide from her. "It's okay. I'll tell you slowly when we meet." Zhou Qin seemed to think of something. She said, "By the way, Feng Na has been looking for you everywhere these days. She has come to class many times. I asked her what she wanted, but she didn't say anything. Do you want to call her?" Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "Forget it, I'll go to school. I've been absent for so many days. If I don't go, there will be a missing person notice." Zhou Qin's voice sounded a little cheerful at this time. She said, "Well, if you don't come, your classmates will forget you." Li Yundong chuckled and said, "See you later." After that, he hung up the phone and was in a daze. Su Chan asked in a low voice, "Yundong, what's wrong?" Li Yundong seemed to wake up from a dream. He said, "Nothing, I just feel a little emotional." Su Chan asked, "What are you emotional about?" Li Yundong laughed and said, "It's nothing. I just came back from the Fox Zen school and immediately went to school. It's as if I've come from one world to another. Your Fox Zen school is really unlucky to have a college student like me as its leader. No wonder the problem of food and clothing can't be solved." Su Chan pretended to be angry and said, "Don't say that. Moreover, this is not your Fox Zen school but our Fox Zen school. You are now a member of the Fox Zen school. You have to carry forward our Fox Zen school. Reinvigorate our Fox Zen school." Li Yundong laughed and said, "I don't dare to say that. If you don't starve to death, I'll burn incense and pray to Buddha." Su Chan smiled and reached out to touch Li Yundong's cheek. "Shame on you, leader. What a good-for-nothing." Li Yundong grabbed her hand, stared at her, and pretended to be angry. "Do you think it's easy for me to feed a large group of people like you? How dare you say that I'm useless? Watch me." The two of them laughed for a while and then went out. Because Su Chan was by his side, Li Yundong was reluctant to let her walk with him. The two of them still took a taxi to school. As soon as they arrived at the school gate, they saw Zhou Qin standing there as if waiting for them. This girl was like a winter sweet standing at the school gate. She was slim and graceful, and her temperament was so cold that no one dared to approach her. Ordinary boys would feel ashamed of themselves if they looked at her for too long. Li Yundong saw Zhou Qin from afar and waved at her with a smile. When Zhou Qin saw Li Yundong, her face immediately lit up with joy. However, when she saw Su Chan beside Li Yundong, she quickly hid it carefully. She walked up to Li Yundong and said respectfully, "Master?" Su Chan was stunned for a moment. She pulled Li Yundong's hand and asked, "Have you accepted a disciple?" Before Li Yundong could speak, Zhou Qin said to Su Chan respectfully, "Ma'am?" Su Chan suddenly blushed. She was shy and happy, and her vigilance towards Zhou Qin immediately dropped a lot. She giggled and said, "Don't call me that. I don't have a gift for you." Zhou Qin smiled slightly. "Why do you say that?" Su Chan giggled and said, "In our sect, if you call me that, you will get a gift." As she said this, she enthusiastically took Zhou Qin's arm and said, "By the way, do you know that Li Yundong is now the leader of our sect?" Zhou Qin and Su Chan had a good relationship. At this time she was deliberately flattering him, so her face was also full of smiles. She looked at Li Yundong in surprise and asked, "What leader?" Su Chan proudly showed off and said, "That's a long story." Li Yundong saw the two girls whispering intimately to each other, but he felt strange in his heart, especially Zhou Qin. This girl seemed to be wearing a thick mask on her face. Li Yundong shook his head and walked into the school. When he was about to reach the bottom of the teaching building, he heard Feng Na shouting in surprise, "Li Yundong, stop!" Li Yundong turned his head with a smile and saw Feng Na quickly running up to him and throwing a punch at him. With Li Yundong's current cultivation, even 100 Feng Na couldn't hit him, but he still stood still and didn't use his qi. He let her punch fall on his shoulder and said with a smile, "Are you looking for me?" Feng Na laughed and scolded, "I've been looking for you for a few days. My phone has been ringing off the hook these days. What's wrong with you? Why do you always use your phone as a landline?" Li Yundong smiled and said, Sorry. There's something urgent I have to do." "What's so urgent?" Feng Na winked and said, Good news. The deputy mayor will be here tomorrow, and it's the day of the new students' final training. He will be here to inspect the work. At that time, the school will have a representative of the new students and a representative of the school to speak. The school has decided to give you the position of the school representative. Li Yundong was stunned. Didn't this big San Wall student come last time? Why is he here again this time? Feng Na was shocked and quickly looked around. Are you crazy? How dare you scold the leader? Aren't you afraid of being transferred to another province? Li Yundong looked up and laughed. Okay, I was wrong. Why is this bastard here again? Chapter 288. Go to watch net. After Li Yundong finished speaking, Feng Na laughed and scolded him, Your mouth is really unforgiving. Can you stop the deputy mayor if he wants to come? By the way, this is a good job. You'll get extra points for the scholarship evaluation. Go to watch net. 7KOM. Don't shirk it. This is a political task. I just became the president of the student union. You have to support me in my work, right? Li Yundong laughed and said, Look, the first part is good, but the last part is showing your fox tail. Su Chan, who was not far away, heard the word fox. Her ears twitched and she immediately ran over. What? Are you talking about me? Li Yundong slapped the girl on the forehead. Get out of the way. I'm not talking about you. Don't confess without being hit. Su Chan screamed, held her forehead and ran 2 steps away. Then she made a face at Li Yundong. Only then did Feng Na notice Su Chan. She was shocked and asked, Su Chan is back? Li Yundong looked at Su Chan dotingly and said with a smile, Yeah. A hint of sadness flashed across Feng Na's eyes, but she soon smiled again. Hey, it's a promise. Remember it. Li Yundong smiled bitterly. Hey, you're forcing yourself on me? How can you be so domineering when you're the president of the student union? You're assigning political tasks to me? Feng Na giggled. Just tell me, are you going to help me or not? Li Yundong spread his hands. Can I not help you? You've already said so much. Feng Na slapped Li Yundong on the shoulder and said casually, Good, you're a good buddy. No wonder you're my idol. Just do your best. I have high hopes for you. After slapping Li Yundong, she shook her hand and said with a grimace, It hurts so much. Are you hiding iron on your body? Why does it hurt so much? Then she waved her hand and prepared to leave. Li Yundong stopped her. Hey, what am I supposed to say then? Don't you have to tell me? Feng Na smacked her forehead. Don't worry, she said. I'll give you the script tomorrow morning. All you have to do is read it. She grabbed Li Yundong's arm and said in a serious tone, We can't let anything go wrong like last time. If something goes wrong, I'll be in trouble. Li Yundong gestured with his hand. Don't worry, there won't be any problems. Watch net. 7KOM. Feng Na smiled and said, Then I'll leave first. I'll see how you perform tomorrow. Just as Li Yundong returned to campus, Ziyuan and Ruan Hongling also arrived at Mount Tianlong. However, the 2 of them did not dare to go to the mountain brazenly. Otherwise they would confirm Zhou Ping's words and give others an excuse. Ziyuan asked Ruan Hongling to wait at the foot of the mountain while she secretly sneaked into the Fox Zen school. She saw that the disciples of the Fox Zen school were practicing and cultivating in an orderly manner. There was no depression or sadness after being seriously injured. Seeing this, Ziyuan sighed in her heart. No wonder the Fox Zen school has not been extinguished for thousands of years. It's not without reason. At this time, the Fox Zen school had gone through another big battle. Ao Wushuang had been sealed and taken away. The leader Lu Yi and Yi Yu had died in battle. The eldest Shiji Mo Ashi had been killed 9 years ago. It could be said that all the masters had been killed. Although the remaining seniors of the Fox Zen school had a high cultivation quotient, their Shintong and magic arts were very limited. They were far inferior to Ziyuan. In addition, many people had died in the battle of the Fox Zen school, so the Taoist temple seemed to be sparsely populated. Therefore no one noticed Ziyuan sneaking into the Fox Zen school. After asking around, Ziyuan slipped out of the Fox Zen school and shook her head at Ruan Hongling, who was greeting her at the foot of the mountain. He's not here. Let's go back to Tianan City and have a look. After that, the two of them turned into a beam of blue light and left. However, Chao Yi and the others in the Fox Zen school had no idea that Ziyuan had already come and searched the entire Fox Zen school. At this moment, she was pacing back and forth in the backyard of the Taoist temple with a solemn expression. Her brows were furrowed with worry. Zhuang Yiting, Zhang Sunhong and Lu Yuehong, who were passing by, saw her. Zhuang Yiting immediately smiled and said, "Sixth junior martial sister is here." "Sixth junior martial sister, what are you doing?" When Chao Yi saw the three of them, she said with a smile, "Ah, it's third Shiji. I'm not doing anything, but you three are together. What's the matter?" In the Fox Zen school, eldest sister Mo Ashi was dead, and second senior brother Gu Feng was also dead. Only Zhuang Yiting, who was ranked third, was now the most senior. She said, "I couldn't find leader last night and he left early this morning. I thought about it and felt uneasy, so I went to fourth junior sister Zhang Sunhong to discuss this matter. Coincidentally, fifth junior sister Lu Yuehong was also at her residence. She had the same worries as me, so the three of us discussed it and came to you. You are the most opinionated among us. We would like to hear your opinion." Chao Yi laughed and said, "I happen to be worried about this matter. Shiji, please come in and have a seat. Watch net. 7 KOM. As she said this, she welcomed the three Shiji into the room. The layout of Chao Yi's room was not very different from that of Lu Yi, Ao Wushuang, and the others. However, Ao Wushuang and Lu Ye's rooms mostly used square tables and stools, while Chao Yi used round tables and stools. They scattered around the table and sat down. Chao Yi poured tea for them and said with a smile, "I happened to be thinking about this matter before you Shiji came. Our Fox Zen school has gone through a great change. It can be said that our arms have been destroyed and our legs have been crippled. We can be called useless. Although Ao Wushuang left the Fox Zen school 10 years ago, which greatly weakened the power of the school, we still have leader Lu Yi Yiyu and eldest sister Mo Ashi to support us. Although we can't compare with the big sects, we are not weak." When the three Shiji heard this, they all nodded and sighed. Chao Yi continued, "Although most of us are six-tailed spiritual foxes, most of our magic skills are illusions, witchcraft and charm, which are useless in a fight. If we encounter a few hotheads who don't have a solid cultivation, it won't be a problem to seduce them. But if we encounter an orthodox Shenmen like Zhang Tianhe, who is extremely strong in both mind and internal energy, then we will die. Not to mention other things, now there is no need for the six great sects to come together. Even if only the Jinshan sect comes, we won't be able to handle it. We will have to run away with our tails between our legs." The three Shiji sighed together and said, "Yes, yes." Among them, Zhuang Yiting, who was tall and had a neutral voice, said, "Sixth Shimi, what do you think we should do now? The new leader doesn't seem to have much interest in succeeding the position of leader of the Fox Zen school. When he took over, he was in danger. I think it won't be long before he steps down." Chao Yi also sighed and said, "That's what I'm worried about." Lu Yuehong also said, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm worried about." Lu Yuehong was short, only about 1.55 meters tall, but her figure was petite and exquisite, and her appearance was charming. Her voice was even softer. She said, "As a human being, Li Yundong taking over the position of leader of our Fox Zen school is a taboo in the cultivation world. I'm worried that he won't be able to stand the pressure of the major sects in the future and will eventually give up on us." Zhuang Yiting said, "Yes. At that time, if the major sects continue to put pressure on us with this matter, our Fox Zen school won't be able to withstand such pressure. Although Jinrenli is good and strong, he is not as strong as so many sections. This time, only the cultivators of the younger generation came. What if their elders and masters come next time? How can we resist them? But if he doesn't become our sect leader, then any small sect will be able to bully us. This is really a dilemma." At this time, Chao Yi said, "What you see is that if Li Yundong doesn't succeed as the leader of our Fox Zen school, we will be in danger of being destroyed. But what I see is that if he can continue to be the leader of our Fox Zen school, there will be hope and possibility for our school to prosper." The other three looked at her and asked, "What's the difference between the two?" Instead of answering, Chao Yi asked, "Let's reach a consensus first, that is, do we want Jinrenli to succeed as the leader of our Fox Zen school?" The other three said in unison, "Of course." Zhuang Yiting smiled and said, "Jinrenli is a rare cultivation master in recent years. He is young and promising and he has a chivalrous heart. The most commendable thing is that he doesn't look down on us because we are fox spirits. Lu Yuehong, who was standing to one side, said, I think the rarest thing is that he has true feelings for Su Chan, a disciple of our Fox Zen school. The two of them fell in love with each other, which is very commendable. At this time Chao Yi sighed and said, we don't know whether this is a blessing or a curse for the time being. When Ao Wushuang and Wang Yuanshan, the leader of the Linggong sect, fell in love with each other, didn't they also make a lot of noise and cause the two sects to decline at the same time? Chao Yi suddenly changed the topic and said, since we all hope that Jinren Li will be our leader, what I want to say is that since ancient times in the cultivation world, which sect has not become famous because of a certain genius? The Chuanzhen Dragon sect became famous all over the world because of Qiu Chuji, the immortal and Buddhist sects became widely known because of Wu Shouyang and Lu Huayang, and the Donghua sect became known all over the world because of Ning Chuanzhen. Our Fox Zen school is also known to the world because of Ancestor Rock and the mystical Silver Fox. It can be seen that, except for the big sects like the Jingyi school which have a deep foundation for thousands of years, if other small sects want to revitalize, the foundation lies in people. It depends on whether there is an amazing person who can carry forward their sect. Chao Yi said with confidence. Speaking of this, she suddenly paused and said word by word, I think Jinren Li is such an amazing person. Even compared with Qiu Chuji of the Chuanzhen Dragon sect, Wu Shouyang and Lu of the immortal and Buddhist sects, and Ning Chuanzhen of the Donghua sect, he is not inferior. Zhuang Yiting, Lu Yuehong and Zhang Sunhong hadn't expected Chao Yi to give Li Yundong such a high evaluation, but when they carefully imagined the scene of Li Yundong fighting with the major sects that day, they couldn't help nodding secretly. Lu Yuehong praised, yes, Jinren Li's talent in fighting is indeed extremely rare. Zhuang Yiting praised, I think that this person's will is firm and can be said to be rare in the world. It's really amazing that he can fight for a long time under the siege of all the major sects without a trace of fear. Even Zhang Sunhong, who had been silent, said, yes, Jinren Li's Niden is powerful and condensed, and his Jinqi is vast and majestic. He can be said to be unparalleled among the younger generation. Even compared with many of the older generation of cultivation, he is better than many people who have undeserved reputation. At this time Chao Yi took over the topic and said, so, I am very optimistic about Li Yundong's future. Once he becomes one of the top great cultivators in the cultivation world, even if all the sects in the world want to deal with our Fox Zen school, we don't have to be afraid. The other three nodded in unison. Chao Yi suddenly changed her tone and said, but what I'm worried about is that although we really hope that Jinren Li can be our leader, I've dealt with him several times. His words and brows always reveal a feeling that our Fox Zen school is a big burden. Or, is there anything about our Fox Zen school that can attract him and make him continue to sit in the position of leader? As soon as she said this, the other three immediately looked at each other. If it had been someone else, they might have used a trick that had been tried and tested in the world. Charm him. Foxes were best at this trick. Otherwise, why would people call those coquettish women foxes? But if the target was Li Yundong, they wouldn't dare to do this no matter how much courage they had. Although these sly foxes had never set foot in the mortal world, they were not fools. Li Yundong was willing to challenge all the sects alone for Su Chan. He would rather be besieged than to put himself in danger. What kind of deep and firm feelings did he have for her? They were afraid that if they failed to charm him, they would be at a disadvantage and cause Li Yundong to be disgusted. If that happened, they would go for wool and come home shorn. Lu Yuehong thought for a moment and said, since he and Su Chan fall in love with each other, why not understand his feelings and move him with reason? Chao Yi said, I've also thought of this, but Su Chan has left our Fox Zen school since she was a child. We don't know how strong her sense of belonging to the sect is. Moreover, her master Ao Wushuang was taken away by Yen Fong. Needless to say, she is anxious. Whether she has the intention to let Li Yundong take care of us is unknown. These words made the others frown. Zhang Sunhong said, then what do you think we should do? Chao Yi smiled slightly and said something that would make Li Yundong vomit blood in the future when he thought of it. My wife has gone back to her parents' home to send her off. Sorry for updating late. In addition, group 1 2 3 4 5 6 is full. Please don't add it. Group 7 is now officially open to 1056488074 people. Chapter 289. Go to WatchNet. When the other three saw Chao Yi smiling but not speaking, they all urged, don't keep us guessing. Look at the situation now. Chao Yi smiled and said, in fact, it's very simple. We will go down the mountain and follow the leader. When he needs help, we will go and help him. We can't do anything else, but can't we do these things within our power? Lu Yuehong's face was full of doubt. Will this work? Didn't the leader ask us to stay here? Chow Yi smiled and said, but the leader also said that we don't have to stay here. Go to WatchNet. 7 KOM. Zhuang Yiting said, but what should we do to help the leader? What can we do? Chow Yi said, how would I know? We can just act according to the circumstances. Lu Yuehong asked again, but we've never gone down the mountain before. Chow Yi smiled and said, Su Chan has never gone down the mountain before, but isn't she fine now? Besides, we are dignified cultivators. Are we afraid of secular people? Zhang Sun Hong, who had been silent all this time, said, do you know where the leader is? Chow Yi nodded and said, the leader told me before he left. Zhang Sun Hong nodded and stopped talking. Zhuang Yiting, who was beside him, said, but what if the leader doesn't appreciate our help? Chow Yi said, I think our leader is a very emotional person. He won't be ungrateful. Moreover, he is different from us. If we don't show enthusiasm and take the initiative, I'm afraid he will think that we are rejecting him. Speaking of this, the other three nodded together. Zhuang Yiting, who was the third oldest, said, then shall we go now? Chow Yi said again, no, if we leave, what about the juniors? After the heavy losses of the Fox Zen school, all the outer disciples had run away as soon as possible, and most of the inner disciples had been killed or injured. At this time there were only 11 people left. If the 4 elders left together, there would only be 7 juniors left in the Fox Zen school. If Chow Yi and the others were here, even if they couldn't win, they could at least rely on their own illusions to escape or hide. But now that they were gone, there were only a few little foxes left here. They couldn't escape even if they wanted to. The other 3 looked at each other in dismay. Lu Yuehong asked, then what should we do? Are we supposed to take them all away? Chow Yi smiled bitterly and said, what else can we do? It would be good to bring them down the mountain to see the world. It's even less safe at home. Zhuang Yiting and Lu Yuehong had never gone down the mountain before, so they didn't know what to prepare. They looked at each other and said in a daze, well, let's go together. Zhang Sun Hong said, but the sect can't be empty. I'll stay here. If anyone comes, there will be someone to entertain them. Chow Yi said worriedly, Shiji, can you do it alone? Zhang Sun Hong smiled faintly. It's fine. Even if I can't beat them, can't I run? Our Fox Zen school may not be powerful in other kung fu, but we are definitely the best at escaping. If we make up our minds to run away, no one can catch up with us. Watch net. Chow Yi laughed. That's true. Shiji, you stay in the sect. We'll take the juniors down the mountain. After a private discussion, the big foxes came to the front hall of the Taoist temple and gathered the other 7 little foxes. When they told them that they were going down the mountain, the little foxes cheered and their eyes lit up. Are we going down the mountain? That's great. Can we finally go out and see the mortal world? Hooray! Seeing that the little foxes were so naughty, Chow Yi glared at them and shouted, how can you be so noisy? Only then did the little foxes quiet down again. They whispered to each other and chattered, their excitement evident on their faces. Hey, I heard that the people at the foot of the mountain are dressed so beautifully. Yes, I wonder what it's like at the foot of the mountain. But I don't have any good clothes. Oh, don't you have a very beautiful set of clothes? Just wear that one. Will that one work? Yes, I'm going to wear it too. Chow Yi sighed and said, if you keep quarreling, we'll go by ourselves. Only then did the little foxes shut up and stop talking. They all looked at Chow Yi eagerly. Chow Yi thought for a moment and deliberately said seriously, it's impossible for everyone to go this time. Someone must stay behind to guard the sect. If any of you is disobedient, I'll let her stay behind to guard the sect alone. When the little foxes heard this, they immediately fell silent. They all kept a straight face and looked straight ahead like soldiers about to go to war. Seeing that Chow Yi had frightened the little foxes by playing the good cop, Zhang Sun Hong laughed and said, well, don't scare them. I'll take care of the sect. You can all go. The little foxes immediately cheered and surrounded Zhang Sun Hong, chattering, Fourth Sherbua, you're the best. Chow Yi pretended to be angry and said, you only know how to praise Fourth Sherbua? Well, then you can go with her. The little foxes rushed toward Chow Yi again. Sixth Sherbua is also the best. Chow Yi scolded them with a smile, you're a group of fence-sitters. Listen up, this time you're not allowed to run around. If you're disobedient, don't come back in the future. In addition, go back now. We'll set off before dawn tomorrow morning and fly to Tianan City. The little foxes asked curiously, Sixth Sherbua, why do we have to set off before dawn tomorrow morning? Yes, why do we have to fly? Isn't it better to take the train? I've never taken a train before. What are we going to do in Tianan City? Why do we have to go there? I want to play somewhere else. Chow Yi was angry. Bastard, if you keep talking, none of you are allowed to go. Why do you want to take the train? Can any of you make a penny? The money was given by the leader, but you're still nagging. If you keep talking, you're not allowed to go. The little foxes stopped talking and looked at each other. After a long time, one of them raised her hand and said weakly, 6 sherbua, it seems that you haven't made a penny either, have you? Chow Yi was furious. She waved her sleeves and left. Go back, all of you. We'll set off tomorrow morning. The next morning, the big and small fox spirits set off from Mount Tianlong in a mighty manner before dawn. When the sky began to brighten, they flew to Tianan City and began to land one after another. Watch net. After the group of fox spirits landed on the ground, they walked for a while before they arrived at the city. They looked around curiously at the various modern buildings in the city. For a moment, they were dazzled by the high-rise buildings made of reinforced concrete and the heavy traffic on the wide roads. The little foxes pointed at the passers-by and whispered to each other, "Hey, they're dressed differently from us. Yeah, their clothes are so ugly. Our clothes are the best." That's right, that's right. I've heard of a term called what time? It's fashionable, idiot. Yes, what is fashionable? It's different from the masses. At this time it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, the rush hour. The little foxes were self-righteously commenting on the passers-by on the side of the road, but they didn't feel that their clothes were strange at all, attracting the attention of passers-by. They were all wearing ancient dresses, very similar to what Su Chan had worn when she first came to Li Yundong. The passers-by on the street were all stunned and thought to themselves, where did this group of beautiful women come from? Which crew is going to shoot a movie here? A driver saw the group of women in beautiful ancient dresses from afar, and his eyes immediately went wide. He didn't even look at the road and directly caught up with the car in front of him. Then, one after another, cars rear-ended one after another. After the rear end of the car, the drivers got out of the car, but they didn't go to find trouble with the other party. Instead, they all stared at the group of fox spirits going down the mountain in astonishment. Needless to say, the fox spirits were gorgeous and beautiful. In the past, the appearance of one was enough to cause great waves in the human world, not to mention the sudden appearance of so many fox spirits, and their costumes were so eye-catching. These fox spirits were all exquisite, beautiful, and delicate. Even an old fox spirit like Chow Yi looked like a young girl in her 20s. Moreover, compared with these frightened little foxes, they were much more dignified, and there was a kind of enchanting charm in their reserved manner. As soon as this group of fox spirits appeared, the road was suddenly in a mess, and there were continuous car accidents. The pedestrians on the road stopped walking and stared at them. Some of the bolder ones went up to them and asked, "Are you going to shoot a movie?" Chow Yi and the others didn't speak, but the younger generation couldn't help but ask curiously, "What is a movie? Hey, do you know where our sect leader is?" "Yes, we're here to find him." When these people heard this, their expressions became strange. "Leader? What leader?" Chow Yi couldn't stand it anymore and said seriously, "Hello, do you know Li Yundong?" These people looked at each other. "Li Yundong? Who is he?" The little foxes were immediately displeased. In their opinion, Li Yundong, who had turned the tide and saved the Fox Zen school, should be the most famous person in the world. Seeing that these people didn't know Li Yundong, they shouted one after another, "You don't even know our leader. You're too ignorant. I won't talk to you anymore. You're so annoying. You don't know Li Yundong either. You've lived in vain." These passers-by felt wronged. They all thought to themselves, is Li Yundong a very popular star? It seems that I've been a little out of touch recently. Well, I have to go to cram. Thus, one of them asked sincerely, "Then who is this Li Yundong?" The little foxes were about to speak proudly, but Chow Yi glared at them and stopped them. She said seriously, "Do any of you know where Tianan University is?" Some curious passers-by immediately said, "I know. I'll take you there." Chow Yi was afraid that she wouldn't be able to find the place, so she was delighted and smiled slightly. "Thank you." None of these fox spirits were not stunning beauties. Chow Yi's smile was even more charming, making the passers-by's bones feel a little lighter. They wished they could fly immediately. Some of the other men around them felt their hearts beat faster. Regardless of whether they had to go to work or other things, they also said, "I know. I'll take you there." After that, she led the group of fox spirits to Tianan University. At first, there were only about 20 of them, but Chinese people were the most curious about good things. Some of them didn't know what was going on, so they came forward to take a look. As soon as they saw it, they couldn't take their eyes off it. They followed the group of fox spirits in a daze, whispering to each other as they walked. Hey, what are you going to do? I don't know. F***ck, why are you following us if you don't know? F***ck, to see beautiful women. How many times can you see so many beautiful women in your life? That's true. But these beautiful women look like they're going to shoot a movie. I think so too. Maybe I can get an autograph later. Where are they going? Why are they walking so fast? You talk too much. They seem to be looking for a man named Li Yundong. That name sounds like a man. So many beautiful women are looking for a man? Could this man be the director? I guess so. Alas, so many beautiful women have been ruined by a director. Speaking of this, the men who were whispering to each other cursed in unison, "Beast." This statement gradually spread among the followers of the fox spirits, so more and more people became curious. One after another, they cursed the beast and wondered what the beast looked like. The group of people slowly increased from more than 20 to more and more. In the end, there were hundreds of people, like a tide, heading straight for Tiannan University. The city leaders were coming to Tiannan University that day, so the school gate had been closed early. The security guard at the school gate was shocked when he saw such a group of people rushing toward the school from afar. He thought to himself, "Oh my, are they going to riot?" When the little foxes at the front saw the school gate being closed from afar, they shouted, "Open the gate, open the gate." As soon as they shouted, the people behind them also shouted, "Open the gate, open the gate." The school security guard's face turned pale with fear. He would have dared to stop one or two people, but with so many people, who would dare to stop them? Besides, the gate was only half closed and not locked. It was too late to lock it at this time. Just as he was hesitating, the crowd had already arrived in front of him. They rushed past him like a torrent and rushed through the door. The crowd rushed in like a tide, causing the hat on his head to be tilted askew. He barely controlled his body so that he wouldn't be squeezed by the crowd. He grabbed a man and asked, "Hey, what are you doing? It's illegal to break into the school." The man who had been caught rolled his eyes. "Who wants to break into your stupid school? Do you think you're the municipal government? Hey, let me ask you, where is Li Yundong?" The school security guard was stunned. "Li Yundong?" The man immediately asked, "Do you know him?" The security guard slapped his thigh. "Of course I know him." The people around him said one after another, "This beast is really famous." "Where is he? Where is he? Take us there." Almost at the same time, Chao Yi and the others also asked the students in the school, who were stunned by the scene, about Li Yundong's whereabouts. As soon as these students heard that they were looking for Li Yundong, they immediately shouted, "I know where Li Yundong is. Follow me." After that, the group of people turned around and headed for the school playground. Although it was time for the military training to end, many of the older students did not participate. Some of them heard the commotion and poked their heads out of the classroom. They immediately asked around curiously, and when they heard the commotion, they immediately laughed and joined the crowd. The crowd grew a lot bigger, and in an instant there were about 800 or 900 people. They went straight to the school field in a grandiose manner. Please do not join the group repeatedly. Once you join the group, do not post any pictures related to politics. Thank you for your cooperation. Chapter 290. Go to watch net. Although this group of people was large, there were even more freshmen on the sports field of Tiannan University. There were 2,000 to 3,000 students from more than a dozen faculties. When they surged to the edge of the sports field, although they attracted the attention of the freshmen on the sports field, they only thought that the older students were there to watch the fun and did not think much of it. Watch net. Chao Yi and the others were at the forefront, looking for Li Yundong in the dense crowd on the playground. While they were looking, Lu Yuehong suddenly pointed to a dignified boy standing in a row on the rostrum in front of the playground. She said, "Look, isn't that the leader?" When Chao Yi and the others saw this, they were overjoyed. The little fox spirits were about to shout, but Chao Yi quickly stopped them. She glared at them and said, "Don't shout. Let's figure out the situation first." The little foxes nodded and said, "Sixth Sherboy is right." At this time, Deputy Mayor Luo had already finished speaking on the rostrum. It was the principal's turn to speak. After the principal finished speaking, it was time for the new and old student representatives to speak. Li Yundong was standing on the rostrum with his eyes closed when he felt someone poking him. He opened his eyes and saw Feng Na winking at him and saying, "Hey, are you nervous?" Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. He had dealt with the siege of the major sections. What was this battle in front of him? Wasn't this a joke? Li Yundong smiled and said, "What's there to be nervous about?" Feng Na pursed her lips at Yan Hua, who was not far away, and said in a low voice, "Someone seems very nervous." Li Yundong took a look and saw that Yan Hua's thighs were trembling unconsciously. He was using his fingers to twist his thighs, staring straight ahead and muttering something. Li Yundong couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Why does this guy look like he's possessed by a ghost? Feng Na pursed her lips into a smile and said, "Isn't it because you are giving him too much pressure?" Li Yundong snorted and said, "That's because he's too competitive. He likes to compete with everything." Feng Na whispered, "Hey, I heard that Deputy Mayor Luo came to the school for an inspection because of him. This guy is a big shot, so it's understandable that he's a little nervous." Watch net. 7 KOM. As soon as she finished speaking, Deputy Mayor Luo walked up to him, patted him on the shoulder and said kindly, "Xiaoyan, don't be nervous. This is just a small matter for you. A dignified Zhuangyuan shouldn't have stage fright." Yan Hua was provoked by Deputy Mayor Luo and immediately said, "What's there to be afraid of? Uncle Luo, you underestimate me." After that, his legs immediately stopped shaking, and his eyes were no longer empty. They became bright and full of spirit. He looked at Li Yundong with a belligerent look, full of provocation. Covering her mouth, Feng Na giggled, "This guy still can't forget about suppressing you." Li Yundong rolled his eyes at Feng Na. "Aren't you the one who fanned the flames? If you don't let me give the speech, this won't happen, right?" Feng Na smiled and said, "How can I do that? If you don't come out among the seniors, the others will be booed." Li Yundong said in a low voice, "Hey, I'm telling you this is the last time. I won't agree next time." Feng Na said with a disappointed look, "Ah? Then won't you break the hearts of your fans and make them despair?" Li Yundong scolded with a smile, "Don't give me that." The two of them were talking and laughing, but suddenly the principal had finished speaking. Yan Hua walked up to the rostrum with his chest puffed out and began his speech loudly. Li Yundong and Feng Na saw that Yan Hua didn't have a piece of paper in his hand, so it was obvious that he was giving an impromptu speech. Feng Na smiled and said, "Oh, he's the first one now. I was wondering what he was mumbling just now. It turns out that he was reciting the script." Li Yundong saw that Yan Hua's tone was rhythmic, and there was no stuttering between his words. He was indeed a natural speaker. He couldn't help but laugh and say, "This guy seems to be running for president of the student union with you. His speech seems to be running for president of the student union." At this time, not only did Li Yundong hear it, but even Chao Yi and the others outside the playground could tell that something was wrong. Lu Yuehong saw that Yan Hua was full of passion and generosity, and that he was the hero of the world. She couldn't help frowning and asking, "Shimmy, what is he talking about? Why am I a little confused?" Chao Yi also frowned. She shook her head and said, "I don't know. Let's go." However, a little fox spirit said carelessly, "Oh, it's very simple. This is the major sect's election for the leader of the cultivation world. Look, two old men went up to talk and then another one went up. I don't know who will go up next." She was talking nonsense, and the other fox spirits, who had never seen the world of cultivation but didn't understand the world of mortals, nodded in unison. That makes sense. As the saying goes, public opinion can melt gold, and accumulated slander can wear away one's bones. Seeing that they were all saying the same thing, Chao Yi also began to waver and muttered, "Is that really the case?" At this time Zhuang Yiting suddenly said, "Hey, don't you think this person looks like Yan Fang?" As soon as she said this, the others took a closer look and were immediately shocked. They all said, "Indeed." Chao Yi was even more shocked. She said, "Could it be that the major sects are really running for the leader of the cultivation world? However, if the leader of the cultivation world doesn't fight, why should they compete with words? Why don't I see anyone from the other sects?" Zhuang Yiting snorted coldly and said, "These righteous people are the most insidious. Do you know what they are up to? No, we have to help our leader." The other foxes said one after another, "How?" Zhuang Yiting said, "Our spiritual power is weak, so we can't help in a fight, but we can try our best to make trouble and stop this person from speaking." The other foxes laughed at the same time. "Good, that's a good idea." However, as soon as they finished speaking, Yan Hua had already finished speaking. He bowed and stepped down from the stage, so neat that the foxes with evil intentions didn't even have a chance to do anything. All of a sudden the fox spirits were dumbfounded. They looked at each other and said, "Oh no, he's finished. What should we do?" Yan Hua's speech was indeed wonderful. As long as one had ears and judgment, they would secretly praise him and give him a heartfelt applause. This young man was indeed talented in debating. His speech was endless and he did not have stage fright at all. He immediately won a thunderous applause from the audience. After he left the stage, Deputy Mayor Luo patted him on the shoulder with relief. "Not bad, you didn't embarrass your old man." Yan Hua raised his head proudly. "Thank you for your praise, Uncle Luo." After that, he glanced at Li Yundong and said provocatively, "It's your turn to go on stage, Li Yundong." He emphasized the last three words, and Deputy Mayor Luo also felt the hostility in Yan Hua's heart. He looked at Li Yundong and immediately remembered that this was the boy who had teased his foreign friends at the exchange meeting at Tiannan University last time. He said with a fake smile, "It's you. Do your best." Li Yundong smiled at him, neither servile nor overbearing, and walked to the rostrum. He didn't take Yan Hua's provocation to heart, nor did he intend to compete with him. Therefore he didn't intend to go off script and still prepared to give a speech according to the script. When the three old foxes Lu Yuehong, Chao Yi and Zhuang Yiting saw Li Yundong on the stage, they immediately began to whisper to each other, "Oh, the leader has gone up. What should we do? We didn't help him just now, but we can't miss it this time." "Yes, but how should we help him?" Chao Yi thought for a moment and said, "Last time the leader fought against the heroes and we cheered from the side. I think this time we will be no exception. Let's cheer for the leader together." The fox spirits nodded one after another. "Okay, let's do that." After that they were about to shout, but they opened their mouths and closed them again. They all turned around and said, "Sherbo, what should we shout?" "Oh." Chao Yi thought for a moment and said, "It seems that mortals like to cheer?" Her voice was a little louder, and a female student next to her immediately said, "What era is it? Why are you still shouting this?" Chao Yi asked in confusion, "Then what should we shout?" When the girl saw that Chao Yi and the others were so beautiful, she secretly felt ashamed of her inferiority. Hearing their nonsense, she couldn't help but roll her eyes and sneer. "Now it's fashionable to call someone a bumpkin." The other little fox spirits said unhappily, "Who are you calling a bumpkin?" Chao Yi stopped them and said carelessly, "Thank you for your advice." The girl snorted and turned her face away, cursing in her heart, a group of coquettish foxes. However, she hadn't expected that she was right. After Chao Yi and the other fox spirits unified their statements, they agreed to shout together. Li Yundong had just said on the rostrum, "Dear leaders, school teachers, students, today." Before he could finish his words, he heard a loud shout coming from the playground, "Li Yundong, add a bumpkin." This shout was loud and clear. It was so abrupt that it immediately attracted the attention of everyone on the playground to Chao Yi and the others. For a moment, the playground was extremely quiet, not a single sound could be heard. Li Yundong, who was on the rostrum, found the voice familiar and looked in the direction of the voice. Even though Li Yundong's cultivation was profound and his willpower was strong, he couldn't help but shake and almost fall off the rostrum. He saw the fox spirits of the Fox Zen school dancing and shouting at him by the side of the sports ground. Li Yundong was dumbfounded. His eyes stared blankly and he couldn't say a word. The freshmen on the playground and the onlookers on the sidelines couldn't help but laugh when they saw Li Yundong's expression as if he had seen a ghost and the group of vixens cheering excitedly. Some of the busybodies simply followed the fox spirits and shouted, "Li Yundong, add a bumpkin." As soon as they shouted, the others also followed suit. Li Yundong was already very popular at Tiannan University. This time, more than 2,000 freshmen on the sports field also laughed and followed suit. They shouted loudly, "Li Yundong, add oil to the sky." At this moment, Li Yundong was going crazy. He felt as if the sky had turned dark at this moment. In the past, it had been enough to have Su Chan around to cause trouble, but now the whole Fox Zen school had come. This was the end of the world. Chapter 291. Go to watch net. Li Yundong looked at the noisy audience, and his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He couldn't wait to rush off the stage and ask loudly to Chao Yi and the others, "Why are you here?" But he couldn't. There were thousands of people watching him and he still had to finish reading his speech. Li Yundong coughed dryly. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he saw that the students under the stage had already burst into laughter. As soon as he opened his mouth, the sound coming from the microphone could not be heard. Go to watch net. 7 km. The school teachers on the rostrum looked at the scene below the field with their mouths agape. They had never thought that such a thing would happen. The principal, who was close to Deputy Mayor Luo, was sweating profusely. Deputy Mayor Luo said with a fake smile, "Well, Tiannan University is really lively and unique. This sentence made the school leaders sweat profusely. They wanted to rush off the stage to cover the mouths of every student. Although these teachers were flustered and exasperated, there was someone who was even more flustered and exasperated than them. This person was none other than Yan Hua. Yan Hua saw that his carefully prepared speech was no match for Li Yundong's silence, especially when he had invited Deputy Mayor Luo to cheer for him. In the end, the limelight had been stolen by Li Yundong. How could he not be angry? How could he not go crazy? Yan Hua's heart was bleeding with hatred. Seeing that the scene was in a mess, he kept saying in his heart, "Go ahead and make trouble. Let's see how you get off the stage." Seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, Li Yundong frowned, secretly mobilized his Jinchi, used the mantra Mahamudra Kung Fu and said again, "Dear leaders, teachers, students, hello." As soon as he said that, he immediately suppressed the voices of everyone present. His words revealed a power that was not angry but naturally dignified. It was like Vajra chanting or Buddha chanting scriptures, causing everyone who heard it to unconsciously quiet down. For a moment, the chaotic playground immediately quieted down. Everyone looked up at Li Yundong on the rostrum and listened to him speak. Although the boy was reciting clichés according to the script, people felt that there was a sense of gentleness and reliability in his voice, which made people feel warm in their hearts. It was as if a force of vitality was growing in them. As the saying goes, the layman watches the fun, while the expert watches the technique. At this time, when Chao Yi and the others heard Li Yundong speaking with the mantra Mahamudra, they couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "Leader's cultivation is really pure. It's admirable." Just as she was sighing with emotion, she suddenly heard a low cry of surprise, "Sixth uncle, third uncle, fifth uncle, why are you all here?" Chao Yi and the others turned their heads and saw Su Chan pushing her way through the crowd towards them. Watch net. 7KOM. Chao Yi and the others were overjoyed to greet them. Just as they were about to recognize each other, they saw a beautiful woman with a cold temperament and a slim figure standing beside Su Chan. Chao Yi swallowed her words and just said with a smile, "Su Chan, you're here too?" Su Chan had heard someone jeering before and felt that the voice was very familiar. She pulled Zhou Qin over to see what was going on. As soon as she got closer, she found that the people jeering were none other than the Shurboss of the Fox Zen School. She was immediately surprised and delighted. She said with a smile, "Are you here for Yundong?" Chao Yi nodded. Yes. Su Chan was a person who wanted to see the world in chaos. She didn't feel that there was anything wrong with Chao Yi and the others jeering just now. Instead, she clapped her hands and said with a smile, "Good, good. Now that you're here, I'll have company." Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, looked on coldly. She had heard a lot about the cultivation world from Su Chan before, and she also knew that Li Yundong had become the leader of the Fox Zen School and had become the leader of a group of fox spirits. She was both shocked and incredulous, but she had to believe it because all the facts were in front of her and she couldn't refute them. Zhou Qin saw that the behavior of this group of fox spirits was contrary to common sense and was very ostentatious. She was worried that they would cause trouble for Li Yundong, so she said, "You will cause trouble for Master." Master. Chao Yi, Lu Yuehong and Zhuang Yiting, the three old foxes, were immediately shocked, but the other younger foxes didn't notice this. Instead, they said with some jealousy, "Who are you? What right do you have to say this?" Su Chan, who was standing to one side, saw that both sides were a little angry, so she immediately became the peacemaker. She took Zhou Qin's hand and said, I forgot to introduce her. This is Yundong's classmate, good friend and eldest disciple, Zhou Qin." Then Su Chan introduced the disciples of Fox Zen School to Zhou Qin one by one. "These are my Shibua and Shiji." After she introduced them one by one, Zhou Qin greeted them one by one. Although she was polite, her face was always cold. There was not a trace of a smile on her face, giving people a feeling of arrogance. The juniors of the Fox Zen School did not pay much attention to Zhou Qin's identity, but they were very impressed by her cold face and lukewarm attitude. They were all unconvinced and muttered to themselves, "What's so great about her? Strictly speaking, we can also be regarded as the disciples of the leader." However, Chao Yi and the others knew the weight of Zhou Qin's identity as a disciple. Chao Yi thought to herself, in the future, if Li Yundong becomes a great grandmaster and wants to establish a sect, then Zhou Qin will be the first disciple and the pillar of the sect. For thousands of years, the first disciples of various sects have all been important figures in their sects, and they are also well known in the cultivation world. Watch net. 7KOM. Even if Li Yundong did not dislike the Fox Zen School and continued to be the leader, Zhou Qin would still be his direct descendant. Li Yundong's voice and what would need to be conveyed through Zhou Qin. None of his fox spirits could fight. Obviously, Li Yundong wanted to cultivate a personal disciple to help him in the future. The cultivation world was the same as the martial arts world. For a master, accepting a disciple was more important than giving birth to a child. Both were for the sake of carrying on the family line. Having a disciple was equivalent to having a son. Sometimes, a master was even closer to his disciple than to his son. This was because no matter how good a person was at fighting, it was impossible for him to do everything by himself. Therefore he had to accept a disciple and let the disciple help him. However, the disciple could not lose on the battlefield. Otherwise, others would say that the kung fu of this sect was useless. Therefore the older generation was extremely strict in accepting disciples. However, once they found a good seedling, they would immediately regard him as their own son and teach him the best things. Not only did they expect him to carry forward the sect, but they also expected him to support them in their old age. Although the cultivation world was not like the martial arts world, the principle was roughly the same. Moreover, the rules for accepting disciples were 100 times stricter than in the martial arts world. Seeing that Li Yundong had already accepted a disciple at such a young age, Chao Yi couldn't help but mutter in her heart, "This woman is so young and beautiful. I wonder if the leader can teach her well. Did he take a fancy to her appearance and accept her as a disciple? If so, don't delay the leader's cultivation." Among the older generation of the Fox Zen school, Chao Yi was more scheming. She took the initiative to shake hands with Zhou Qin with a smile. Taking advantage of the opportunity, she carefully looked Zhou Qin up and down. Chao Yi was suddenly shocked. She saw that Zhou Qin was not only beautiful, but there was also a compelling heroic spirit between her eyebrows. Moreover, there were hidden edges between her eyebrows and her eyes were extremely sharp. Obviously she was a person who was determined to kill. Most importantly, she took advantage of the opportunity of shaking hands to explore Zhou Qin's body with her yuanqi. She immediately found that this woman was not only an extremely rare Shenin maiden furnace, but also a strong yuanyang qi was faintly revealed in her extreme yin constitution. This shock was no small matter. It was best for a man to cultivate with a child's yang body, but the most difficult part of cultivating with a child's yang body was to cultivate the extreme yin qi and the extreme yang. Women themselves had 5 leakage bodies, so it was 100 times more difficult for them to cultivate than men. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to cultivate the extreme yang qi with the virgin yin body. Before the major sects besieged the Fox Zen school, there had been dozens of disciples in the Fox Zen school. Only Yi Yu and Ao Wushuang could cultivate the extreme yang qi from the extreme yin qi, including Moashi who had died long ago. The reason why they couldn't fight was that they hadn't cultivated the extreme yin qi into the extreme yang qi. But the woman in front of them was not only a Shenin maiden furnace, but also had the extreme yin qi in her body as well as the yuanyang jinqi. This was equivalent to a female inner disciple cultivating hard for more than 10 years to make up for Zhou Qin's lack of cultivation. Chao Yi took a deep breath and thought to herself, she was born to be a cultivator. Such talent is really hard to come by in 100 years. If the cultivators of other sects saw her, I'm afraid they would fight for her. Where did the leader find such a piece of unpolished jade? He's really lucky. As long as she cultivates a little, she will immediately become a good cultivator who can fight and fight. In the cultivation world, finding a good disciple is more important than finding a good powerful magical weapon. As the saying goes, powerful magical weapons are easy to find, but good disciples are hard to come by. At this time, Chao Yi's impression of Zhou Qin had changed greatly, and she no longer dared to look down on her. She knew that although the cultivation of the woman in front of her was far inferior to hers at this time, she would definitely surpass her in the future. Moreover, she and the leader were both disciples and friends. Chao Yi couldn't stop her, so it was better to help her go. Especially when Chao Yi thought that after Zhou Qin's cultivation was successful in the future, the Fox Zen school would have 2 pillars, and they would no longer have to worry about being bullied. She couldn't help laughing. Chao Yi held Zhou Qin's hand and said very intimately, "It turns out that you're a disciple of the leader. What a coincidence to meet you here today. I'll call you Shirji, but I don't have any gifts for you today." As she said this, she took off a jade bracelet from her wrist and put it on Zhou Qin's wrist. "Come on, this is a little token of my appreciation." At a glance, Zhou Qin could see that the jade bracelet was of pure texture, and there was a warmth in the green color. At first glance, she could tell that it had been worn for a long time. It must be a very valuable treasure. She quickly refused and said, No, I can't accept a reward without doing anything." I should be the one to greet you, Sherbua. At this time, Lu Yuehong and Zhuang Yiting also came to their senses and enthusiastically came up to Zhou Qin to get close to her, which made the little foxes roll their eyes. Even Su Chan was a little jealous. Sherbua, you've never been so enthusiastic to me before. While they were chatting below the playground, Yan Hua, who was on the stage, was furious. He saw that as soon as Li Yundong spoke, the noisy playground quieted down. It was as if he could summon the wind and rain. He was gnashing his teeth when he glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw a circuit board at his feet, which was connected to the power of the microphone. Yan Hua's heart skipped a beat, and he quietly kicked off the power with his foot without changing his expression. With a buzzing sound, a sharp and harsh buzzing sound came from the school playground, and the work immediately stopped. Whether it was the students, teachers, or the crowd who had come to watch the fun, when they heard the sound, they immediately covered their ears and grimaced. Although they had covered their ears and the loudspeaker on the school playground had run out of power, Li Yundong continued to read the script as if he hadn't heard it. His voice was still clearly transmitted to the ears of everyone present. Everyone was stunned for a moment and subconsciously let go of their hands. Sure enough, they heard Li Yundong's voice still ringing in their ears calmly, as clear as a whisper. They covered their ears again, but Li Yundong's voice did not weaken in the slightest. It just became a little distant, as if he was a preacher reciting scriptures on a distant mountain. Li Yundong's careless display of skill stunned everyone present. It was not something an ordinary person could do without a microphone and a loudspeaker on such a large sports ground. Thousands of people in the audience could hear him clearly. That was not something an ordinary person could do. This kind of kung fu seemed easy and ordinary, but even the stupidest and most inexperienced person knew how amazing it was. Suddenly, some people who had come to watch the fun outside the playground couldn't help but secretly cheer in their hearts. At this time, the playground was even quieter than before. Everyone listened to Li Yundong's speech attentively. They didn't want to pay attention to what Li Yundong was reading. They only felt that listening to the boy's voice was like drinking a bowl of hot soup, warm and comfortable in their hearts. Not long after, Li Yundong finished reading the script in his hand. As usual, he bowed and stepped down from the stage. When he left the stage, the crowd outside the sports field let out a long-suppressed cheer. Then the whole sports field burst into thunderous applause, and the cheers shook the sky. Chao Yi and the others also applauded and shouted in admiration, and the little fox spirits, led by Su Chan, screamed loudly, "Li Yundong, add more fuel to the fire." But their voices were like small stones in the midst of the applause and cheers that were like raging waves, disappearing after making a splash. Yan Hua watched Li Yundong walk off the stage with jealousy and hatred in his heart. He couldn't imagine that Li Yundong would be able to control the situation in such a situation. Everything he had done before had become a foil for this boy. Am I born to be a foil for this boy? Yan Hua roared in his heart. No, it's impossible. I have always been first. I will never lose to him. Yan Hua was furious. While no one was paying attention, he gritted his teeth, turned around and plugged in the power supply. Then he rushed to the rostrum, grabbed the microphone, pointed at Li Yundong and shouted, "Li Yundong, do you dare to discuss the law with me in front of so many people?" Chapter 292. Go to watch net. The commotion caused by Li Yundong's speech on the stage had already given the school leaders a headache, but what was even more troublesome was that the top scorer in the city had actually provoked Li Yundong on such an important occasion. Go to watch net. 7KOM. Colorful text. Learn net. Super_speed. More. No. The school leaders all cursed in their hearts. Children nowadays are really becoming more and more unscrupulous and self-centered. How can they speak and do things completely regardless of the occasion? The vice president suppressed his anger and said to Yan Hua, "Yan Hua, pay attention to the occasion." However, Yan Hua acted as if he hadn't heard him and just looked at Deputy Mayor Luo. Deputy Mayor Luo hadn't expected that his attendance at the military training graduation ceremony of Tiannan University would cause such a thing. He sighed in his heart that the son of the Yin family was really competitive, but at the same time he was very worried and didn't know whether he should help him or not. But this hesitation only lasted for a moment. Soon there was a storm of shouting under the playground. "Agree to it, agree to it." The students on the playground were extremely excited, especially the freshmen. They had never expected that the university they had been admitted to would have such exciting, fun, and lively things over and over again. Well, it seemed that college life would not be lonely and boring. In any case, it was better for them to die than for themselves. Watching the fun, the freshmen started to make a ruckus. Even Su Chan, Chao Yi, and the others were shouting for Li Yundong to take on Yanhua's provocation. Chao Yi frowned and sneered. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, if someone gets stage fright in front of everyone, the reputation of the leader will plummet. Su Chan also nodded hard. In her opinion, Li Yundong would definitely be able to defeat this annoying guy no matter what. However, Zhou Qin looked up at Li Yundong on the rostrum, feeling a little worried in her heart. Li Yundong saw that the students under the stage were making a ruckus, just like what had happened in the small auditorium. He couldn't help but feel a headache coming. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a roar from the side. Li Yundong agreed to it. Don't be afraid of him. Li Yundong turned his head and saw Feng Na waving her arms and shouting, as if she wanted the world to be in chaos. He immediately glared at Feng Na, but Feng Na stuck out her tongue and turned her face away. Li Yundong looked at Feng Na. Li Yundong was in a difficult position at this time. He was not a timid person, so he asked coldly, "How do you want to discuss the law?" The school leaders had hoped that Li Yundong would remain calm and not argue with Yanhua, but who would have thought that both of them were young and aggressive? Neither of them was willing to submit to the other. In front of so many people who would be willing to bow their heads. Seeing that the situation was not good, the vice president immediately wanted to rush over and ask someone to turn off the power of the microphone. But at this time, Deputy Mayor Luo suddenly smiled and said, "The school spirit of Tiannan University is very lively. It reminds me of the time when I argued with others about a topic. Good, young people should have this kind of spirit." This sentence sealed the coffin. The other teachers were dumbfounded. They weren't stupid. Who couldn't tell that this sentence was indirectly supporting these two students to have a PK here? At this time the teachers were not in a hurry. Anyway, if the sky fell down there would be someone taller to hold it up. There was a show in front of them, so they just watched the show. With the support, Yanhua immediately became courageous. He said loudly, "Do you dare to debate Buddhism with me here in front of thousands of teachers and students?" These days, Li Yundong had read through the classics of Buddhism and Taoism. He was no longer the ignorant young man he used to be. Although he didn't dare to say that he was well versed in the classics, he could still explain the Buddhist Dharma and Taoist Dharma clearly and logically. Go to the internet. 7 KOM. Seeing Yanhua's arrogance, Li Yundong was angry and said, "Why wouldn't I dare?" Yanhua sneered and said, "But I want to set a rule for the discussion." Li Yundong sneered and said, "What rule?" In front of the microphone, Yanhua pointed to the thousands of students under the playground and said loudly, "There are thousands of people here, and almost 99% of them support you. Whatever you say they will cheer and agree. If I argue with you like this I will be at a disadvantage." Before he could finish his words, the students on the playground had already started booing him. Someone even shouted, "If you have the ability you can also be so popular." Li Yundong snorted and said, "Haven't you heard of the saying, although there are thousands of people, I will go forward? Since you don't have such courage, why do you have to challenge me in front of so many people?" Between the two of them, one was holding a microphone and was being booed by the audience. Many people couldn't hear what he was saying, while the other didn't need a microphone to speak. As soon as he opened his mouth, everyone on and off the field could hear what he was saying no matter how noisy it was. In comparison, there was no need to argue about the Dharma. The students under the stage started booing Yanhua. However, Yanhua's expression didn't change. He said eloquently, "Even Buddha doesn't dare to go against the will of the common people. He has to take off the gorgeous clothes of a prince and put on the same clothes as a beggar. He has to walk on the street and mingle with the common people. Only in this way can he spread his Dharma." It can be seen that the will of the people is irreversible, and even Buddha is no exception. Even Sakyamuni is like this. How can I think that I am better than him? Li Yundong frowned and said, "Then what do you want?" Yanhua pointed to the playground below and said loudly, "It's very simple. Even if the people below don't help either side, they have long been inclined to you in their hearts. No matter what I say they will not cheer for you. No matter what you say they will cheer for you. Go to the internet." 7 KOM. So, in order to discuss the Dharma fairly, if you want them to oppose you, they will oppose whatever you say. Li Yundong sneered disdainfully in his heart. Before he had time to speak, the students below the stage began to clamor again and shouted, "F***CKU, can you be more shameless?" That's right. You might as well say that Li Yundong is not allowed to speak and only you are allowed to speak. However, Yanhua still said with a straight face, "You think that I am shameless and shameless, but have you ever thought about how much pressure you are putting on me by supporting one person like this? Immediately, someone shouted, "If you are under pressure, why are you jumping out? Get out of here." Someone else shouted, "Li Yundong is not afraid of this kind of pressure." Yan Hua deliberately pretended not to hear some of the curses and immediately seized on one of the people's words. He said loudly, "Li Yundong is also afraid of this kind of pressure. If you don't believe me, you can try it later." No one can remain calm in the midst of all the boos. I bet that he won't be able to finish his sentence later. Yan Hua's words caused a stir in the crowd below the stage, and the students began to whisper to each other. Chao Yi also frowned and said in a low voice, "This is a trap. Leader, don't jump into it." Su Chan was not worried about this. In her opinion, Li Yundong would definitely win, but she was very curious about Yan Hua's words. She asked, "Will Yundong be unable to finish his sentence later?" Chao Yi smiled and said, "Leader, you are fearless even when fighting with the young masters of the major sections. How can you be afraid of this kind of verbal battle?" However, Su Chan's eyes were rolling and she was extremely curious. After Yan Hua finished speaking on the rostrum, he turned to Li Yundong and said, "Do you dare to promise me?" Li Yundong thought to himself, "I have seen much more powerful battles than this. Why would I be afraid of this? What a joke." He said proudly, "Why wouldn't I dare?" Yan Hua nodded, then turned to the people on the playground and said, "Since Li Yundong has agreed, you can boo him and oppose him when you see him. Let's see if he can remain calm under your boos." Most of the students on the playground ignored him and only a few of them shouted, "Okay." Yan Hua didn't care so much. He turned his head and said to Li Yundong, "So, Li Yundong, I'm debating with you about the Dharma. Do you want to ask first or do I want to?" Li Yundong said, "Is there any difference between you and me?" Yan Hua said loudly, "Of course there is a difference. Heaven, earth, the sun and the moon have a front and a back. There is an order of seniority. There is naturally a big difference between asking first and asking second." Li Yundong saw that although the other party was asking who would ask first, there was a hidden meaning in his words, which implied the Dharma. He knew that the other party had already begun to discuss the Dharma. Li Yundong said, "Since you said that heaven, earth, the sun and the moon have a front and a back, may I ask which one is first, the sun or the moon?" Although the quality of the students under the playground was not uniform, most of them had been admitted to the university after hard work. They were not stupid. As soon as they heard this, they knew that Li Yundong and Yan Hua were already competing with each other. Immediately, they all listened to the debate between the two of them with rapt attention. Some people didn't understand what they were talking about, so they asked the people around them in a low voice, "What do they mean?" Immediately, someone explained in a low voice, "Yan Hua is seizing the initiative in the debate. Whoever seizes the initiative first can control the direction of the debate topic, control or influence the other party's thinking, and let the other party follow their own thinking." Then how can Yan Hua take it? Didn't you see who asked first? Then he used this point to put forward the principle that heaven, earth, the sun, and the moon have a front and a back, and that there is an order of seniority. This is equivalent to starting an argument in the debate and throwing out an argument. Then Li Yundong must refute his argument, otherwise he will fall into a passive position. Then how does Li Yundong refute it? Li Yundong is very cunning. He secretly changed the concept and asked the other party whether the moon appeared first or the sun appeared first. If Yan Hua says that the sun appeared first, then Li Yundong can refute that according to the visual distance, the moon is much closer to us so it is obviously in front. Then what if Yan Hua says that the moon appeared first? Then Li Yundong can say that according to the sky, the sun appeared far earlier than the moon so it should be the sun that appeared first. Damn, isn't that a dilemma? No matter how you answer it, it's wrong. Yes, that's why I said that Li Yundong is very cunning. There is a trap in his words. Hey, who do you support? I originally wanted to support Li Yundong, but according to the rules of their debate, I have to support Yan Hua. Wow, no way you actually support Yan Hua. Nonsense, if I don't support him when he loses the debate, he will blame it on us. Humph, I want Yan Hua to lose wholeheartedly. Well, that makes sense. The students below the stage whispered to each other, while the debate between Li Yundong and Yan Hua on the stage was going on fiercely. In the face of Yan Hua's aggressive question, Li Yundong avoided the strong points and threw out a trap question. However, Yan Hua was not an ordinary person. He saw through the deep trap in Li Yundong's words at a glance. He didn't take the bait and also asked in return, "Then I want to ask you, which came first, Buddha or man?" This question immediately moved Li Yundong, Chao Yi, and the other cultivators. Although Su Chan had cultivated with Ao Wushuang in the mountains since she was a child and mostly practiced Taoist magic, She had also read a lot of Buddhist classics. She opened her mouth and said in surprise, "This guy is so powerful. How should I answer this question?" Although Zhou Qin could sense that there was a trap in Yanhua's words, she didn't know where the trap was and how powerful this sentence was. She immediately asked Su Chan, "What's wrong with this sentence?" Su Chan knew that although Zhou Qin was intelligent, she knew nothing about Buddhist principles and Dharma. She explained, "This sentence is a rhetorical question from Yundong. He asks whether the sun or the moon came first, and whether Buddha or man came first." Zhou Qin nodded. "I understand this, but how should I answer it? Shouldn't man come first and then Buddha come? Human beings came first and then Sakyamuni? Isn't this a very obvious question?" Su Chan shook her head. "No matter how you answer it, it won't work. If you say that man came first, then you will fall into his trap. You can say that Buddha once said that man is Buddha, and Buddha is man. Man is Buddha in the future and Buddha is man in the past. Since Buddha said that man himself is Buddha, why do you say that man is in front and Buddha is behind?" Zhou Qin frowned and said, "What if Buddha is in front and man is behind?" Su Chan said, "That's even more against the most basic principle. When humans first start to evolve, they are no different from beasts. At that time, people don't understand etiquette and shame at all, let alone the root of Buddhism and wisdom. Yanhua can refute you from a biological point of view." Zhou Qin asked again, "What if I said that Buddha and man exist at the same time?" Su Chan shook her head and said, "No, the proposition that Yanhua put forward before is that the sun and the moon have a sequence, which means that there must be a sequence, and they can't coexist at the same time. At this time it seems that we are talking about Buddha and man, but in fact, we are still debating whether the sun or the moon came first. If you say that Buddha and man appeared at the same time, it is tantamount to surrendering and admitting that your previous argument is untenable, which means that you have lost." Hearing this, Zhou Qin gasped and said, "Then how can we refute this sentence?" Su Chan looked at Li Yundong on the rostrum with a worried face and said, "I don't know either." Chao Yi, who was standing to one side, said with a solemn face, "This person doesn't look like a cultivator. If it's a battle of magic, leader can crush him with one finger. But if it's a battle of magic, this person is a strong opponent of leader. //7854627895541. Chapter 293. Go to watch net. Seeing that Yanhua's question was so tricky, Zhou Qin couldn't help frowning and saying, "Then shouldn't Li Yundong debate with him in front of everyone?" Chao Yi, Zhuang Yiting and Lu Yuehong said in unison, "No." Chao Yi said, "Although the scene in front of us has nothing to do with fighting, if it gets out and people from other sects hear that our leader lost to a student who is not a cultivator, how will they look at our leader? How will our leader gain a foothold in the cultivation world?" Hearing this, Zhou Qin stopped talking and looked at the rostrum with a worried face. Go to watch net. When Li Yundong heard Yanhua's words, he was also shocked and began to look at the opponent in front of him again. He knew that this question was tricky and could not be answered directly. After pondering for a while, he said, "You asked me whether Buddha or man came first. Then let me ask you, which one do you think came first, the chicken or the egg?" This question caused an uproar among the students in the playground. Many people burst into laughter, cheering for Li Yundong's cunning response and shameless rhetorical question. Whether Buddha or man came first and whether the chicken or the egg came first, these were all unsolvable questions. Li Yundong cleverly avoided the important and focused on the trivial, blocking the other party's question with a rhetorical question. Su Chan even laughed and said, "Wonderful, why didn't I think of that?" Zhou Qin also smiled slightly and said with respect and admiration, "Sly?" Yanhua saw that his question had not stumped Li Yundong. If he asked another question, it would be meaningless. Moreover, he didn't expect that his questions would be able to knock Li Yundong down. He said loudly, "The body is a Bodhi tree and the heart is like a mirror. Always wipe the Buddha diligently and don't let dust stir up." "What do you mean by that?" Li Yundong immediately said without thinking, "Always take care of your mind and state of mind. Through continuous cultivation, you can resist the temptation of the outside world and all kinds of evil spirits. This is a kind of mentality that emphasizes the role of cultivation. It is the cultivation philosophy of the eminent monk Shinshio." After Li Yundong finished speaking, he immediately asked loudly, "There is no Bodhi tree and the mirror is not a mirror. There is nothing, so where does dust stir up? What do you mean?" Yanhua immediately said, "This is 6th Patriarch Huineng's Gatha. It says that there are not so many troubles in the world, so why do we have to rub the mirror of clarity in our hearts every day? Zhou Qin watched as the two of them asked each other about the two classic Buddhist verses. She was very familiar with them, but she didn't know why they were asking such questions. She asked Su Chan again, "What are they talking about now?" Su Chan said, "Just now the two of them were testing each other's reaction and agility. Now they are testing each other's theoretical foundation of Buddhism." These two hymns were written by two disciples of the fifth ancestor Hongren of the Zen sect of Buddhism. Yan Hua asked about the hymn written by Xinxiu, while Li Yundong asked about the hymn written by the sixth ancestor Huaining. Watch net. Later, because of these two poems, the Buddhist Zen sect split into the north and the south. They represent two different approaches to cultivation. Zhou Qin nodded and stopped talking, continuing to look up at the field. After Li Yundong and Yan Hua tested each other's thinking reaction and Buddhist foundation, they finally stopped testing each other and directly engaged in close combat. Yan Hua said loudly, "There is a saying in the first volume of Mahaprajnaparamita, different emptiness without form, different emptiness without form. Form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Please explain what form is." Li Yundong immediately said, "The four elements are all emptiness, and the five skandhas are not there. But because all the dharmas have gathered into this body, although the form of form comes and goes back and forth, it evolves into millions of ends and forms the boundless world. Therefore, in the final analysis, form is one." Yan Hua said again, "If the form is one, then please explain what is emptiness?" Li Yundong said, "Form is not its own form. It arises from cause and effect, so it returns to one. Emptiness is not a vacuum but the great treasury of the void. If we talk about its origin, it also returns to one. This is the principle of all dharmas returning to one." Yan Hua immediately asked, "Then where does all dharmas return to one?" Li Yundong laughed and said, "All dharmas return to one. One is still one." Yan Hua saw that he couldn't answer Li Yundong's questions, so he was unwilling to give up and asked again, "What is the eyeless method?" Li Yundong replied casually, "I hate to see flowers growing together when the curtain is closed, and I fear to see swallows perching on a high building." Yan Hua asked again, "What is the earless technique?" Li Yundong said, "Don't teach the flute to frighten the willows, don't teach the flute to provoke the phoenix." Yan Hua asked again, "What is the noseless technique?" Li Yundong immediately said, "The orchid is not stained by the king's aura, and the daylily is not stained by the fragrance of a girl. What is the tongueless art? Fortunately, I did not plunder the black prison. Why are you spitting out green lotus? What is peerless body art? Accustomed to moving the unclean to the west, cursing the unruly Chen to learn from Xiaolian? What is the unintentional method? Only for the sake of love to become a minor tribulation, but because it does not hinder the spiritual platform." Yan Hua fired off a barrage of questions and Li Yundong answered them without pause. The two of them fought back and forth like soldiers engaged in hand-to-hand combat, causing the students on the sports ground to burst into cheers. Watch net. Even the teachers who had been unhappy before nodded secretly at this time, feeling admiration for the two young people on the rostrum who dared to debate the Dharma in public in front of thousands of people. Chao Yi, Su Chan, and the other cultivators were even more impressed. Chao Yi nodded and said, "This boy's previous questions were very tricky. If it were me, I might not have been able to answer them." Lu Yueheng praised, "It's rare that the leader is so young, but he has also studied the Dharma so well. Amazing, really amazing." Zhuang Yiting said, "The young man who argued with the leader is also very good, but I don't know what his relationship with Yanfang is." Most of the students didn't understand the meaning of the debate between Li Yundong and Yan Hua, but the experts could see the artistry, while the layman could just watch the fun. They only felt that the battle between Li Yundong and Yan Hua was very fierce. It didn't matter whether they understood it or not. But in terms of the initiative, it seemed that Yan Hua had the initiative, but in terms of momentum, Li Yundong was able to block soldiers with arms and water with earth. His words and actions were really full of spirit and spirit. At this time, many students on the playground couldn't help but cheer for Li Yundong. But as soon as they started to cheer, some people stopped them and said, "You're silly. You can't cheer for Li Yundong, or Yan Hua will go back on his word. You should cheer and oppose him. This is the support for Li Yundong." Only then did they remember what Yan Hua had said before. They all laughed and said, "Isn't that simple?" For a moment, many people on the field began to cheer. At first there were only a few, but gradually more and more people began to cheer. Some people didn't understand, so they asked for the reason. After hearing the explanation, they suddenly laughed and said, "So that's how it is. Well, it's good to make him admit his defeat." Su Chan and the others who were standing next to the playground were shocked to see more and more people start to boo Li Yundong. But when they asked for the reason, they all laughed. Su Chan was a mischievous girl and liked to play with Li Yundong the most. Thinking that she hadn't ruined Li Yundong's show in public, she suddenly felt that this matter was novel and exciting. She immediately clapped her hands and said, "Okay, let's shout together." After that, she shouted as if she wanted the world to be in chaos. The foxes of the younger generation of the Fox Zen school seemed to follow Su Chan's lead. Seeing her shout, they also shouted. Although Chao Yi and the others felt that something was wrong, they couldn't tell what was wrong. The little foxes had never expected that it would cause a beauty effect. Many of the men who had come to watch the fun heard them shout and immediately followed suit. At first, these people had been cheering to help Li Yundong, but they hadn't expected that people not only had herd mentality, but also had compassion. Some people saw that Li Yundong was extremely strong on the stage and shone brightly, so they couldn't help but begin to sympathize with Yan Hua. Some people simply turned it into reality and began to cheer for Li Yundong. At this time, as soon as Li Yunyang opened his mouth on the stage, there would be thunderous boos and boos from the audience. No matter how powerful his jinqi was and how high his cultivation was, it was extremely difficult for him to compete with the noise of every word he said. In particular, he could vaguely hear the sound of girls booing. Li Yundong looked in the direction of the voice and saw Su Chan and a group of little foxes booing. Li Yundong suddenly became angry. He was so angry in his heart. "It's fine if these people booed me, but why are you also booing me? How dare you help an outsider?" At this time, Yan Hua found that Li Yundong's thinking had begun to be unable to keep up with him, especially when his face darkened and his eyes kept sweeping down the stage. He was overjoyed and said proudly, "Now do you know what it feels like to be booed and cheered by everyone?" Li Yundong's face turned blue. He found that he had fallen into Yan Hua's trap. As a cultivator, he was strong-willed, but it was too difficult for him to think without any hindrance in the midst of thousands of people's objections and boos. Especially Su Chan, the little girl who was foolishly joining in the uproar. She didn't realize at all that they had fallen into Yan Hua's trap. Li Yundong snorted coldly and argued with Yan Hua. But now, the mentality of most of the students had completely changed. They only felt that booing Li Yundong, a legendary figure in the school, was very fun and exciting. The rebellious mentality defeated the mentality of worshipping the strong. Many people began to look forward to Li Yundong's reaction after he failed in the discussion. As soon as Li Yundong opened his mouth, there was a burst of booing from the audience. Every time he threw out an argument, the audience said in unison, "Objection, objection." When Li Yundong refuted Yan Hua's point of view, they encouraged Yan Hua. Agree. Even if Li Yundong had great ability, it was impossible for him to play in this situation without any hindrance. He couldn't help but say angrily to the students under the playground, "Hey, you guys are making a lot of noise." Seeing that Li Yundong finally couldn't help it, the students under the stage burst out laughing. They were proud and happy as if they had done a great prank. Li Yundong said loudly, "Do you agree with whatever I object to and oppose whatever I agree with?" The students under the stage laughed and said, "Yes." Li Yundong turned his face to Yan Hua and said, "As long as I can make these guys unable to oppose me, I will win this discussion, right?" At this time, Yan Hua saw that everyone on the field had switched sides to support him. He was very proud and said arrogantly, "Yes, you have a way to make them unable to oppose you. Naturally, I can't outtalk you. I will immediately admit defeat." Li Yundong turned his face again and said to the students inside and outside the playground, "Do you all oppose whatever I agree with? Do you all agree with whatever I object to?" The students on the field laughed and said, "Yes, that's right. As long as you agree with it, we will oppose it. As long as you oppose it, we will agree with it." Li Yundong said loudly, "Well, listen carefully." After that, Li Yundong took a deep breath and said a famous sentence that shocked the universe and made the Bodhisattva shake his head in fear. Li Yundong roared, "I object to eating sh*t." For a moment, the playground was extremely quiet, and there was no sound on the field. Last week, the children's flowers were very powerful and ranked 7th. This week there should be 4 updates. However, because I was going to attend the annual meeting this week, I cheekily asked for a leave from the children. There were still 2 updates a day, but the extra updates were temporarily cancelled. I will come back from Beijing on the 23rd. In other words, there were 3 updates on Tuesday this week. Tomorrow is Wednesday and I will go to Beijing and won't be back until next Thursday. When I come back, I will make up for the 3 updates I owe. In other words, I owe the children 3 chapters this week. When I come back from the annual meeting, I will make up for it. Cupping one's hands and bowing. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.